not going to matter. Kirk on the flank finds it down onto one. Riot's already down, so it's a technical 1 versus 2. And Bry just swung to his death. Twizzler on the top floor will look to retrieve their teammates, but a Kirk can find the timing and clutch it out. An ace for Kirk.
But Spider still gets a kill, and then Extra not ready for in the corner, but oh my goodness, he gets the kill anyways! He gets the kill, Teddy left alive. He doesn't yet again for Mirage! He's low on health, especially when the Vulcan canisters are in play, but now Ambi low as well, but he takes the kill anyways! He's still left, but with 15 seconds and not too much intel as to where they are, it's not looking great for him, but he's just got the isolated frag on an aim key, and the last one's left in Freezer. This could be a very easy pick to find if he just looks in the right corners with the shotgun as well. He'll be lethal in the close range. A 1-on-2 for the Gridlock.
Semi-final Saturday is here as we welcome you in to another day of XGS season number 7. My name's Navical, joined by Goose, and we could not be more thrilled to have you in for the showcase of the 4 fantastic teams that are left in this season.
Yeah, we've finally gone down to the last threshold. This is the last testing ground for what, in my opinion, are 4 of the most competitive teams in Amateur Siege so far.
Looking at this bracket, I think it's fascinating to see how things have played out so far. I think a lot of people going into playoffs with how Thrive played in the group stage looked at them as kind of one of the favorites who kind of stormed through that top part of the bracket, but Fluffy AIMERS with a huge upset of them in the quarterfinals on Thursday. Not only that, Karn & Co. really didn't put up a fight against Makers. Those are kind of the 2 that are really standing out to me.
Yeah, I also think SSG Academy getting rid of wildcard aces, I think, is the best way to put it. Thrive not taking a map is one of the most surprising to me, but also I think, in my opinion, a lot of other opinions, we are looking to see if Fluffy AIMERS and Makers can finally verse each other. Those are the 2 favorited teams to go on to the finals. But in my opinion, I think SSG Academy not only has the best chance as they have somewhat on paper the easier team, but also they are the better team compared to Mormon Battalion. I think they really have everything in their favor to really just shut this team down and send themselves to a best of 5.
It really would be exciting to get to see those 2 teams come up against each other in that best of 5, like you mentioned. But I think it's time we start talking about our first matchup of the day, which is Fluffy AIMERS versus Space Station Academy. Kind of a titanic matchup if you really look at it on paper, because you've got on one side Fluffy AIMERS, who have really been on the up and coming recently, but you've also got SSG, who have kind of been a staple of the T2 and T3 scene for a really long time.
Yeah, it is really funny because throughout every single event, whether it be XGS, TPL, E3, throughout the group stage, every single SSG Academy roster has had a slow start. Then leading into the playoffs, they get into that point where they really start to ramp up. But this semi-final position against Fluffy AIMERS is a position not only against this team, but in this section of a tournament, they have fallen short every single time. This is going to be the biggest testing ground. And speaking of testing ground, we got to look at the players, got to look at who we're going to be seeing today. It's going to be Fluffy AIMERS and a relatively, standard roster. We do have the entire roster. We got JJ, Deity, Rival, Recited, Emilio. We talked about how Recited after BGS was brought in as a new recruit and instantly had immediate success paired with the addition of their coach also. So this is, again, one of the most solid rosters on every single point, whether it be the guns or the structure. But Fluffy AIMERS really have everything that you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, if you talk about this team, they had kind of a, I guess, not a very exciting exit from Element. They didn't even make it to playoffs, but then they come back, and then just last weekend in Wildcard Restart, they beat 2 Pro League teams, and they have really come into form. They have been led by JJ, who, as you can see here, has had a pretty nice season thus far. He's had a pretty good impact in every area that you can really have an impact in. He's holding his own in the kill department. He's getting the bomb down when the opportunity presents itself. But he's also staying alive almost 1 in every 3 rounds, which is really big for a support player who can kind of just sit on the back lines and really beef up his entry players like you were talking about. He's got players like Deity on the team. He's got Rival, who are those really big gunners. And he's just kind of sitting back and enabling them to be the big gunners that they are.
Yeah, and you're definitely going to need a player like JJ to show up against such a stacked team. like SSG Academy, two of the main players that a lot of people really go to is Focal, that IGO, that traditional player that really leads your fourth. But also, I talked to SSG Academy's coach Rockstar, talked about how Rampy's influence is both in the actual lobby and also after the lobby in the strats, just simply making his job a little bit easier and giving a lot of experience and info to a team like SSG Academy is going to be so useful. But one player in particular that is going to use this information to the most is Mike W. An overall 11-9 entry, second best to I believe it's 12-14, and then 8 plants. He is third overall in the entire tournament so far with plants, and on top of that, having the second best entry and a relatively great KD, the best overall rated player on SSG Academy. Also, he is the player that can really do everything in every single statistic in all parts of the map that you really need from a player like him.
Yeah, Mike W has always kind of been that player, is pretty much an X factor, we'll call it. He's really been that one who can either make or break a team in terms of success. And on a team like SSGA, where you've got that cohesion, you've got the structure as well that they bring with having somebody like Focal on the IGL who have been together for a really long time, but you've also got that pro league experience being brought in from Rampy. I think this is really the best team that he's been on in a while, and it has really been showing because he's been enabled to have so much impact in so many of these rounds.
Did you just say this is one of the best teams Rampy has been on, or did I mishear that?
No, Mike W.
Okay, yeah. I agree. And also keep in mind that after JetCon left, Focal had to completely relearn how to IGL. Obviously, I'm not exactly sure of his past experience. He may have had an addition, but on this set roster, JetCon was that hard player. So this is a role on this roster, at least, that not JetCon, but Focal has really kind of came into, kind of like how Bosco did after Canadian left on SSG main a couple of years ago. So again, they've had all the time to mesh. I've talked about how they simply needed time. That's not going to be an excuse. You've had an entire group stage, a first round of playoffs, and now you're going up against what is probably going to be one of your hardest obstacles for this roster.
Well, it definitely was a hard-fought matchup the first time these two teams played. They played on Clubhouse, and it was a 7-5 victory for Fluffy AIMERS. And looking at these bans so far, SSG banning out Nighthaven first, that makes a ton of sense. That's Fluffy AIMERS' best map. And then, of course, looking through it, we start out on Chalet, a map that Fluffy AIMERS don't really seem too comfortable on. It's a map that they ban a ton, and they haven't actually played it yet in this season. Now, looking at Border, that's another interesting one. That's one that Space Station Academy really hate. They have first banned it 4 times out of the games that they've played so far. They really have not wanted to show it at all. And Skyscraper, in particular, is really interesting to me because I feel like that's a very even playing ground for both teams.
Yeah, it is very even. SSG previously winning it 7-3 against Final Form. But on the other side of the table, Fluffy AIMERS lost it 7-5, almost going to overtime against Mormon Battalion. The main problem with that game was JJ was not there. And after I talked about JJ, he said his entire group stage games were all just games where they essentially didn't necessarily try and through. Obviously, there's only so much merit you can take to that, especially with a player like JJ that will say a lot and really blow a lot of things out of proportion. I do think there is a little bit before that. So I think taking that game, that loss from Fluffy AIMERS onto a map like Skyscraper shouldn't really tear you in any way. But both maps being maps that both of these teams have not played whatsoever is absolutely perfect, because not only we, but this forces both teams who have a deep coaching staff, who have a deep plethora of, just simply doing their homework, is going to force them to read up on their opponents. And if they don't, then they're going to be punished.
Yeah, something there that you mentioned really stuck out to me. The fact that you were talking about how JJ likes to talk. And I think that that will really be a big thing to look out for in this games. Just kind of like piggybacking off of that, is that SSG Academy are a very heavy momentum-based team. And if they come out here with a slow start and really enable JJ and he starts to get all talkative and they build confidence, then I feel like we might start to see SSGA slip up here a little bit because, like I said, they are heavily momentum-based, whether it be positive or negative. And if they start off slow, you really could start to see them slip up here because as they do, everybody on Fluffy AIMERS is just going to start playing with more and more confidence, and they're just going to, have that chemistry and that coordination to really just shut down everything that SSG is trying to do.
And I agree 100%. As soon as you give the momentum to Fluffy AIMERS, that is when they strike. We saw it when they went up against Thrive, beating them 2-0. I think this is a great chance to say, if SSG continue to make those huge mistakes, this easily can be a 2-0. On the other side, though, if they can use their deep plethora of, skill and experience from their coach and a player like Rampy, and they can have players like Mike W really show up in that entry position and just all other portions of the map, I think this is going to be very close, whether it goes either way. But the problem is you simply cannot let those mistakes fall through, especially this deep into a playoff.
I would not be surprised here if we see that both teams take their respective map picks. Because like I was talking about earlier on, SSGA have proven that they are a very good Chalet team. They actually have a 100% attacking win rate through their one play on Chalet this season. So I would not be surprised if we see them come out here firing and really just put the pedal to the metal on Chalet. But then again, like I said, Border also, Fluffy AIMERS through their one play on it have proven that they are relatively comfortable on it as well. They beat Team Sesh 7-3. And also, that kind of just plays into the fact that both these teams have either been hiding both of these maps respectively, or they just in general don't like to play it. So I would have to think that we go to 3 maps here.
Yeah, I'm just happy that SSG realized that they needed to ban Nighthaven Labs. It took an entire group stage for people to realize you do not take JJ to Nighthaven Labs. I'm pretty sure since the start of XGS, playing it 4 to 5 times, including when they beat Luminosity on it, they have not lost. And I think this is really good, especially as we look back with Mormon Battalion, the Unks allowing 3 out of their 4 only played maps to go through that pool. It really goes to show that if you let your opponents go to maps that they relatively have played or like, it can really stab you in the back. So both teams realizing this, I think all the way from the start with that coaching staff, with the ban phase, it already is a very evened up match.
As we start to get closer towards the game, I want to get your thoughts on a particular operator here. Montang, you and I were talking before this game started that Fluffy AIMERS are a good attacking team, but I think one thing in particular that helps enable them with their attacks is whenever Montang or Shields in general are left up, JJ loves to pick into those operators, and when he does pick into those operators, they find a lot of great success here. So I want to get your thoughts on, do we see SSGA target ban Monty a lot here and maybe just nerf JJ a little bit, I guess, or do we think that maybe both teams try to utilize it?
I think taking Monty off the board is not only a no-brainer, but something that SSG have to do. But on the contrary, that's kind of a pick that Fluffy AIMERS have to be ready to play without, especially with the plethora of stats and just knowledge on how useful and how much they use it. I think simply needing to play without a Monty is really in their game plan. But SSG Academy, they're going to be leaving it up. Grim and Flores being banned. I absolutely love these picks. In my opinion, this really goes to just simply banning these operators and really applying it to the actual play styles of their opponents. Getting rid of those IQ operators, denying that intel from Fluffy AIMERS is such a huge portion of their attack and defense, on the contrary, and just really utilizes and takes so much away. And on the other hand, Fluffy AIMERS, they're doing a lot of bans that really go more to the less of the overall play style of SSG Academy and more towards their play style and how they approach a map of Chalet.
Yeah, in particular, I really find that Grim ban interesting by SSGA because historically throughout this season, they have really liked targeting the Dokkaebi as one of their main bans. The Valkyrie does make a lot of sense for them because that is one of the operators that they have banned the most. And of course, Valkyrie is a very strong operator. There's so much intel that you can get on a map like Chalet with some of those open hallways and in particular fireplace as well. That's just a massive open space that you can get a lot of information on if you're playing on like the snowmobile site. But we won't go to the snowmobile site. First, we will go to bar and games to start things off for Fluffy AIMERS. And overall, they've got a relatively nice mix of lineup here. They've got a lot of utility being brought out in something like the Malusi. You've also got the Wamai as well for a little bit of utility like clear and just keeping things from actually destroying that utility. But you've also got a shield being brought out by JJ, which I would imagine they use over by the top of library stairs. But then again, there is a little bit of potential to play it over by like mezzanine. But yeah, okay, it will be at the top of library. So pretty stock standard there so far.
On top of this, look at the plethora of defending utility. That shield we've talked about, paired with 4 Malusi gadgets and mute jammers. And on top of that, that Flores, he's gone. They're not going to be able to clear that defending utility as easy without having to risk other attacking utility, like maybe a flashbang or a grenade, or maybe even a player life. It's going to make it a lot more difficult for SSG to attack these main extensions around the map, that like we're seeing on top Mez and top Blue. And on top of that, you have a player like JJ inside of that corner just ready to die or potentially escape with his life. And if you look at the overall operator layout, you're not going to have a capital. You're not going to have to worry about playing your life there. And this is a very good read-in from Fluffy Aimers early on.
Most definitely. So far, Fluffy Aimers are playing things relatively passively. They're kind of just sitting in some of their off-site positions. Everybody but Rival, it seems. Rival's kind of off in piano, just doing his own thing, maybe trying to cause a little bit of chaos as we get to the later portions of the round. But overall, like I said, they're just sitting back. They're making SSG Academy come to them. And SSG Academy are one of those slower attacking teams. They usually take a while to get into the building and actually take space. But when they do, they typically just go. They will take whatever is given to them. But Fluffy Aimers will give them nothing as JJ gets the opener. A second one for JJ here as he kills the Monty at the bottom of Fireplace Stairs. But a quick trade from Jabates keeps SSG Academy in the round as it's technically a 3v2 right now with JJ down at the bottom of Mezzanine, but Rival will say no more for Vil, and now it's Mike W. all alone in a 1v3 as JJ continues to bleed out here. He'll look to work his way in towards coat check, but likely nothing going to come of that there, as I believe there's somebody outside of games ready and waiting to greet him if he should try to ingress further into the building, and indeed, he's getting lit up from long range inside of bar, so he's kind of just trapped in this spot, and Didi will get the final kill of that round. Fluffy Aimers start out 1-0.
You can really see the difficulty of just approaching the map, approaching those extensions like I talked about, and SSG trying to do relatively a direct takeover by that fireplace, but because of the overall setup and the positions from those defenders, not only that, but because they continue to double, always made sure that there was a teammate right behind them ready to either get the trade back or double up on a single isolated player, like we saw onto that Monty on side of Fireplace Stairs. It is absolutely just a dogfight. It is really difficult to take these direct fights to a team like Fluffy Aimers because they're always going to be built up and ready for it.
Hey Goose, the streak has been broken. SSGA are no longer perfect on attack on Chalet. Woohoo! Already breaking trends. I love it. But yeah, just really, that attack from SSGA kind of felt a little bit discombobulated. You had that Monty push in at the bottom of Fireplace, sure, but they weren't really established elsewhere on the map to really support the Monty for the general push. And that's when you saw a player like JJ just swing out from the bottom of Fireplace, kill the Monty. You had the player top Mezzanine as well, who was quickly there to support his teammate. And that really was the crushing blow for SSG in that round. When they lost the main operator of the Monty that was kind of spearheading the attack, they really just had nothing left to work with, and it just kind of continued to spiral out of control.
It really, in my opinion, feels a little bit lazy. If I don't want to say it was SSG Academy trying to see what they were getting away with, I do think they generally thought they saw a very open gap that they could take advantage of, and it just was a complete failure. SSG Academy isn't really one of those teams that will use those first to 3 rounds, even throw some simply to just see what they can get. This is a very veteran and experienced team. They know what they're going into. I think that was just one of those situations where they really underestimated the positions, underestimated the overall hold and what they were able to get away with.
Looking ahead, I would imagine that Fluffy Aimers go to Snowmobile here, maybe Kitchen, but I would imagine they go to Snowmobile, which would be really interesting because of the fact that there is still the Monty on the board. We saw the Monty didn't really have a ton of impact in the last round, but in a site like Snowmobile, where there's a lot that you have to clear, and of course you have like the big site itself of Snowmobile that is very wide open, you can really use that Monty to help put pressure on the site itself and assist with the plant, which I would imagine that we do see some sort of plant attempt from SSGA here because, well, it's Snowmobile, and of course you generally will see that happen. But one thing I want to see from Fluffy Aimers, if they do go there, is how much entry denial do they bring out? Do they bring out something like a Goyo? Do they bring out something to pair with that, maybe like a smoke? And how much do they dedicate towards a roam game? Because I feel like you have to at least roam a little bit on that site. But then again, you also want to make sure you have plenty of people left on the site, but they'll kind of throw a little bit of a curveball at us, and then they indeed will go to Kitchener, which kind of does play in a similar fashion in which you do need plant denial, but you also need to focus a lot more on the vertical game.
I really love the switch up from SSG Academy. And one of the biggest slip ups, in my opinion, that went through that operator ban phase is a Brava. And Brava, a lot of the times, is brought to Chalet more times often than other maps. And simply it's because of the plethora of default cams. For example, Fireplace, you can see essentially that entire side of the map and get so much utility from a Brava taking it over. And also, having that Maestro, having the Cade, there's just so much utility that a player like Vil is going to be able to take advantage of if they do clear him a path. And on top of that, you have Rampy going onto a Damo, so you don't really see him on this role a lot too often, more on that Buck role. But this is going to be a very interesting change up. SSG Academy trying to do a lot different early on.
Debates here looking like he might want to jump inside a Library, and indeed he'll be the first one in the building for SSGA. Drone goes right by Rival, but it doesn't look like Debates knew about it, and indeed it will be Rival to swing out here onto Debates, so another entry pick going the way of Fluffy Aimers here. And that's pretty much all of the map control that SSG Academy had initially, now down the drain. But I'm really curious to see what is SSG going to do differently here, because now that they've once again lost that opening pick of the Ash, they don't really have anybody to really spearhead their attack. They might just try to rely on Rampy on the Deimos, but other than that, you don't really have anything.
Yeah, it's another one of those situations where that was just one singular Fluffy Aimers player who was, keep in mind, running away for his life in the middle of that gunfight. That is a situation, a gunfight that you shouldn't lose. And again, another isolated SSG Academy attacker trying to take a gunfight when he doesn't realize that he could potentially be cut off in a 3-man crossfire.
That Subaru going to do a great job here of denying even more space for SSGA, but Focal just runs in as Deity gets 2 kills for himself. Now 4v2, but Focal does have piano control not for much longer as another one from Rival blows Focal into the grave, and now it's Mike W left alone in a 1v4. Similar situation to what we saw last round, but this time it's going to be a lot harder for him to even get in the building itself as he's getting lit up from above. Nice shot onto Recited to make it a 1v3, but still a lot of work to be done as the time continues to tick away. And there's also a player, I believe that's Rival, still up above, looking to potentially go for a flank. So Mike W here should not be much longer in this round.
And just looking for that opening in SSG throughout these first 2 rounds, just really putting themselves in losing situations when they don't really need to. And it honestly looks like they're going into this attacking half with their heads cut off and a nice shot by JJ. And it really does look like, I don't want to use the word lost because it's such a strong word, but they do look just honestly dislocated.
They definitely need to change something here because it's been a lot of solo engagements. I mean, sure, you saw Recited was getting droned in the last round, or not Recited, Jabates rather, was getting droned in towards Library in the last round. But I think he got a little bit overzealous. He walked in before he really knew if that portion of the map was fully clear or not, and he just took space without really being ready for a gunfight. And you saw it was pretty free for Rival to get that entry kill. And then after that, it was kind of the similar story for the rest of the round. SSG Academy walked in, tried to take fights, and every single time it seemed like Fluffy Aimers had the better read on where the player on SSG Academy was. That kill there on the C4 was just unlucky for Focal, but nonetheless, the point still stands. They got a little bit overextended, overzealous, and they paid the price for it.
I agree, and we can really talk about, how much, SSG is giving these isolated gunfights away, how Fluffy Aimers are always doubled up, but it really does look like that Fluffy Aimers simply are just reading this entire attack much better than SSG are able to read the defense on the contrary. And it is really difficult situation because this is SSG's map pick, keep in mind. And obviously the attack is not the favor side. We do tend to see more 4-2 halves on the defense for a Chalet. But again, they just look completely lost, not even realizing and just really understanding what SSG, or not SSG, but Fluffy Aimers are bringing on this defense. I do like this loadout. Vil is going to switch off that Blackbeard, thankfully. And just a lot of utility to deal with those problem players, deal with those problem positions around the map. And this just allows them to open up as many entry points, as many options to win the round as possible. And that was what they were not doing before.
I really like this entry idea for what SSG Academy are trying to do. They know about at least one of these Fluffy Aimers roamers, and they're dedicating many of their forces to try and clear them out. I think that's a really smart plan because if you can clear them out, you can get a lot of control over towards the backside, over by Big Garage, and even up above inside of Dining. The only bad news is that Fluffy Aimers have dedicated a lot of their utility and overall presence towards holding these middle floor positions. So SSG Academy are once again going to need to be on their P's and Q's. And if they're not, and if they try to do what they've done so far, which is take solo fights, they'll likely find themselves either losing entry engagements or quickly being traded back.
Rival and Emilio, aside from recited on those stairs, are essentially isolated. This player is going to be on his camps, and this is the best opportunity for SSG Academy to get these early picks, but they're simply not reading into it, whether it be their drone economy is continuing to dwindle, or if they're just simply not having enough of that drone presence in this area of the map. We talked about how they have that Bravo. They're able to get rid of these default cameras, but not only allowing these players like Emilio to continue to reside in these positions, but also simply not getting that easy pick when it's going to be harder later in the round just makes their job a lot easier. And again, it looks like they're trying to go for a simpler answer when SSG Academy, they could be flanked.
Great util usage there by Jabates to find that shield there. And, oh, JJ just passed by his line of sight and gets the kill on the hatch because of it. No more than that as Rampy's there for a quick trade back. So now a 4-on-4. Just about 40 seconds left. Mike W will go ahead and open up the boiler wall to eventually work his way in. Deity's there, but Mike W is there with another kill. Rival shuts down Rampy. Now a 3v3. And Mike W needs to get in here and get this diffuser down. He will do just that as Vil claims Recited's life. And now there's a good amount of control for the attack here. The diffuser from Mike W will go down and he'll be able to get out of the site. Vil with another kill on the drop in. And now it's DD left in a 1v3 before he's quickly spun on by Mike W as he runs in through Pillar, and SSG Academy are on the board.
Yeah, SSG Academy really showing why that basement is just not a favored bomb site for the defense. But again, I talked about how they tried to take a relatively easier option, an easier avenue into the bomb site, and it potentially could have punished them. But that round, those 2 to 3 roamers upstairs, instead of going for that flank up top, I believe maybe one did, they actually rotated down main and blue stairs trying to support their teammates. A little bit of a misread there, in my opinion, especially with having that hatch open at space. You could have retook and taken away from the attack. A missed opportunity there, but nonetheless, a great start and a great get back for SSG Academy.
Well, we go back to bar now for round number 4. Last time we were here, Fluffy Aimers did a really nice job of having good coordination, specifically when it came down to dealing with the shield that SSG Academy brought. We really haven't seen them utilize the shield at all since that first round, and I think SSG Academy realized that they were a little bit too dependent on that shield play, and it really limited what they were trying to do elsewhere. So they've instead decided that they want to use more of a traditional lineup where you bring 5 standardized guns, rather, and also bring a lot more utility that you can get with other operators. So I really like this change up here to actually enable them to have more of a complete push rather than relying on just that singular shield to try and get you map control, which, like we saw, did not work very well at all for them.
Yeah, and I think, again, one of the problems is this entry game. We didn't really see it in that early round because they attacked onto the bomb site in a 5v5 format. But if you can look at this bomb site, or not rather, but extension, Rival, all by himself, again, and out of all players, we do see this a lot more. It's become a little bit more common on that mute. Again, this is a player that SSG Academy not only should, but really need to identify early on, because again, taking those gunfights, getting rid of those roamers earlier on rather than having to deal with them is great. And Mike W, out of nowhere, is able to find a pick onto JJ.
Good start there, especially with it being the Warden being the one to fall first. Rival as well in a position where he's kind of isolated and cut off. Maybe will be a freebie here for SSG Academy. Specifically, Jabates on the Deimos will be the perfect operator to deal with him here, as it looks like he's been droned out. Mike W as well inside of Fireplace kills Recited. So now he's definitely isolated, as Recited was trying to go back and cover his teammate, but Rival, no, will kill Jabates. That's the Deimos gone. One of the big roam clearing operators off the board, and now Fluffy Aimers find themselves right back in this round.
An absolute huge missed drone from Rampy is going to eventually lose Jabate's life, but still a favorable man count for SSG Academy, but they haven't cleared this top mez position. They wasted so much time on clearing JJ and trying to get Rival, but because of that, they haven't cleared this top blue position. You still have Rival rotating up onto Fireplace stairs, and it doesn't look like they've rented this either.
This is a big fight from Rival here at the top of Black Stairs. Does some damage to the player outside of Fireplace. Will in turn, however, will eat most of his HP. Now gone, left with only 20. As we enter the final minute, Amelia will fall next to Focal. Rival will claim one back, but now it's Deity all alone in a 1v3 as Mike W's on a heater in this round, trying to get his team back at 2-2. And Mike W will just run in and get yet another kill for his team. And SSG Academy have come storming back to tie the game.
The biggest change and different that we saw in that round was putting Mike W on an entry role. First 2 rounds, having him on that hard breach position, which he has played before. He has played Habana in an ace, but being able to stick him not only on an entry operator, an operator like Dokkaebi that is just can really do the job on her own. She has those calls, can really find and eliminate where those defenders are around the map without having to use a drone or any other players or teammates' time. And it really just lets him do his job. And we talked about in the pre-show on how he is not only the second best entry player, but also has the best entry ratio from kill to death. So just putting him in a position where he's able to have that success, where he's able to find those opening picks like we didn't see previously, has already shown instant success. And if they continue to do that, I do think they could snowball into relatively an even half, or maybe Fluffy AIMERS can eventually try and shut him down.
I mean, we talked about how great of an attacking team they are, and I think a lot of that does have to do with the fact that, like you were saying, they do a great job of enabling players like Mike W to go in and have success on those entry engagements rather. But I think another thing worth noting is the fact that they did a great job of isolating Fluffy AIMERS players off of the site there and shutting them down in kind. Now we set our sights back towards Kitchen, and one thing that we saw in the last attempt here, but I didn't really get to talk about, is the presence of the Castle. I really love Castle on this map, I gotta tell you. He is one of my favorite operators because he enables the defense to have so much space to work with. He can create cutoff angles, he can create safe roaming spaces and just off-site holds. There's so much flexibility with how you bring out Castle as an operator, and I just really love to see him enabled.
I really love this extension from Rival because if you look at where the bomb is, it's in Kitchen. This is not a top floor extension on to not Barbecue, but Bar. And on top of that, Recited is also down below. So it's such a heavy extension is going to not only push back this attack from SSG Academy, but having this mirror here paired with an additional teammate is just going to waste so much time, give Rival so much support that he's so needed, and this is going to be a point of the map that SSG is going to be forced to deal with.
Recited will directly trade onto Rampy. That's a big trade there because that is one of your... Sorry?
I said it with the SMG-11 too. That is insane.
Oh, yeah. That is definitely a weird engagement there, especially with the fact that you're also seeing the sledge brought out here by Rampy. You don't really see that anymore, especially with how powerful Ram and Buck are. But specifically, that's a big loss with the Solus being gone, because that's one of your primary roamers, and now Focal will claim Rival's life. So now man advantage once again in SSGA's favor. As they enter the last half of this round, they've got a lot of control going in their way, but they still don't really have much control of the top floor. They haven't really been able to work any vertical game at all. And they're going to be really limited, especially with losing Rampy as their opening death. So they really need to be vigilant with their time management here to enable somebody like Vil to actually have impact.
There's 2 options here for Fluffy AIMERS. Either they can try to get that pick back, then fall back to the bomb site and retire that top floor control, or if you can see with Emilio and Deity, they want to continue to hold this. They want to continue to try and force SSG Academy into that plant in the dining B bomb site so they can get that vertical from above. And this double on the solo teammate, the solo Zofia upstairs, could absolutely be huge if they don't read into it.
Rival off the board, but the threat of Mike W is still very much alive as we enter the final 30 seconds. SSG Academy have kind of just been sitting here for the last minute or so. They don't really know what they want to do because they don't really have much control, but there's a nice swing out, unfortunately. Vil's ready there for 2 kills. Mike W with the last one, and SSG Academy get the final 3 in the matter of seconds. And they've come storming back from down 0-2 to now up 3-2, and they look much better.
3 flawless rounds in a row. This has been a trend with SSG rosters, both Academy and their main, for years. is that they always have, especially on Chalet, conveniently enough, a slow start, whether that be losing 2 to 3 rounds and then striking back with just two back-to-back rounds. And it really goes to show that SSG Academy as a team, as a roster, really just needs that time to really settle into the water of their very first map of the entire series and just get to read. They're a team that can read their opponents so well, even if it does eventually take them relatively a long time. But if you get a 4-2 half after going down 0-2 and then continue that success onto your defense, that is going to be absolutely huge. But on the other side of things, Fluffy Aimers now, for the very first time on the back foot, are looking to answer back to this new formula that SSG Academy has found.
Yeah, Fluffy Aimers really need to bring something here to kind of stall the momentum that SSG Academy have been building. Because like you were saying, starting out 2-0 and then going down 4-0, like we were talking about, SSG Academy is a heavy momentum-based team. And if you let them start to run away with this, especially as Fluffy Aimers get onto their least preferred side of attack, it would not look nearly as good for them. Now, Rival looking to get aggressive here. We'll start to send some shots out over towards Library, but nothing coming of that because nobody really is in the vicinity for SSG Academy. However, the drone work is starting to come in as well, as the attacking team is playing it relatively slow for the first 30 seconds. They're setting things up, measuring twice, preparing to cut once, as one might say. Especially with the presence of the Blitz, you really have to be careful with a shield operator, because if you make one small mistake, you could really lose that big spearhead like we saw in round number 1.
Yeah, I really like, we've seen this with players like JJ and Fluffy Immers, or maybe a Canadian, where you have your IGL be that spearhead on a shield operator, so he can read and get first-hand experience of what this setup looks like. And again, a very powerful extended setup, and the down is going to be absolutely huge on the Focal. 2 opening picks. SSG Academy is starting to absolutely fall apart.
Now Jabate's left in a 1v3. He did get 1 kill there, make it a little bit more manageable for himself, but still, once again, a lot of work to be done here for Jabate's on this Ash. He'll start to walk his way down the library staircase. There's also a smoke with a couple of toxic babes standing in his way, so we'll gonna have to wait a little bit longer to potentially push through there, unless he wants to eat some of his HP in the process. He will recover the diffuser, so in the unlikely event that he gets into the site, he will have the opportunity to get the plant down. Still a lot of work to be done here, as he's changed positions a couple times here, just trying to find some sort of gap in what gamers might be giving him. They definitely know where he is now, and they will definitely change their focus as those Ash breaching rounds are going to go off onto the Banshee. It will mask his approach slightly, but it will still give away where he's going to enter from.
Very difficult situation. He's just trying to look for one pick. Even if he does, the way that Fluffy Aimers have been set up is just notoriously just at getting that trade back. It's going to be a tall task to ask.
Well, there's Emilio to end things out there on to Jabates. And Fluffy Aimers tied the game back up at 3. These teams staying pretty much neck and neck with each other. Nobody really pulling ahead. We saw SSG with that streak, sure, but this is kind of what we were hoping for and what we expected. These teams very much even and very much proving that here as we switch sides to the defense. Now we really have to take a look at what Fluffy Aimers are going to bring to the attack.
Yeah, I think the main problem, not only overall, but on that site specifically, was Focal on the shield. Both times that they attacked this bomb site and lost it, keep in mind, you had Focal on a shield, completely isolate himself, put himself in a solo position away from his team, allowing Fluffy Aimers to double up on him and then kill him. And it's one of those problems where you do want to take that risk, try and get that reward, but a lot of the times, especially with a team like Fluffy Aimers, you're just going to be punished. Now, Fluffy Aimers are going to get to actually swap on to the attacking SSG Academy, trying to find and hope they get some of that success that they found on their attack translated over the defense. I've talked about this, not only as a set team in so far in a playoff run, but also on your map pick. You need to have a great idea on how to play both sides of the blade.
A common trend that is really interesting to me is the fact that we haven't really seen much vertical destruction from either team, whether it be they haven't really had the chance to do it or they just haven't been bringing the operators for it. SSG Academy in that first half brought Sledge a couple times, but Rampy never really was able to have much impact on it because he was either dead or they didn't really have time or control to really work the vertical destruction. And that's something that's coming out here again from Fluffy Aimers. They really don't have anything to potentially work some angles down towards Kitchen if they get master control and CEO control. So it's really going to be a horizontal focused attack, one would think, from Fluffy Aimers here. And I really am questioning as to why.
Yeah, it is one of those situations where you really just want to play yourself out there. And we see the overall defense that SSG Academy tries to set up, especially with players like Jabates and Mike W. They try to create these angles. They try to go for these aggressive swings and runouts to try and punish these players who just simply are not paying enough attention. We're not going to see this for the first round. Now, this is a great read from the team, but so look at this absolute killer cross angle being held by Recited, paired with Deity, and opening absolutely found.
Deity does get one, but no more than that, as Rampy's still up above and lurking. Will quickly trade that one back out. But still, Fluffy Aimers have a good amount of control over towards Solarium, as Mike W is the next one to fall. Rampy now left all alone up above, as I believe Vil fell back towards the site. He's also been droned out here, so we'll likely have to come in engagement from inside a bathroom in the next few seconds or so. Fluffy Aimers are really looking like they want to clear this last player out, and rightfully so, because if Rampy's allowed to persist up here, he could have a lot of impact late in the round. Now, Rival will get down, but JJ will get the next kill and finish off Focal. So now it's a low HP Vil and Rampy left alone, and now it's just Rampy as Recited finishes him off. Left in a technical 1 versus 4, but still a lot of work to be done from above. JJ will look to get the plant down. They do have pings on it, so maybe some denial could come in here. But no, he just doesn't quite have the right amount of information, and now the clock will work against the castle here.
Just a very difficult task for this last SSG Academy player to really ask of themselves. And he has no intel, no idea where these players are. He doesn't know where he's getting shot from. Eventually, he's going to find it. But again, not only is it difficult, but Fluffy Aimers are not giving anything away, any picks away whatsoever.
Well, he's just been kind of running around up above, trying to see if he can't find another kill or two on his way out. Rival will bleed out down upstairs, and Rampy will do some damage to Recited, but doesn't quite have the range with that super shorty, and it'll be Fluffy Aimers to claim their 4th round and make it 2 in a row in their first attack.
Absolute killer. You could see, especially with Recited holding that angle on the DMR of Dokkaebi all the way over by reading in library onto that bathroom player, making sure not only that they choked them out, but they couldn't swing onto DT, trying to make his way into master bedroom and the main bomb site. It's these angles, these point of views that Fluffy Aimers not only have control of, but SSG Academy, they're not even aware that they're being held by their opponents. And it really goes to show that as of now, and in my opinion, as we're looking at this greater picture going into the second half, it really does look like that Fluffy Aimers simply just have a better idea of how to play this map against SSG.
That's really concerning, because this historically has been one of SSG Academy's best maps. They've beaten Pro League teams on here, at least been competitive against them back in Element. But nonetheless, it was a little bit of a different roster, sure, but the general concept of the team is the same. So it's really concerning to see Fluffy Aimers coming in here and really putting up a great fight against this SSG Academy team, and really overall, like you were saying, have looked like the much more potent team in terms of overall killing ability and just team composition. SSG Academy in some of these rounds have been very solo and have been kind of relying on some of these heroic lurks to win them rounds, and that's not a very consistent recipe for success. They really need to kind of get back to their roots of like team play and things like that to really find some success later on in this game.
I think the biggest winning factor for Fluffy Aimers is they have such a deep roster of gunners. We talked about DT, who's going currently before this game started 18-9, plus 9 kills in his entry game. Now 4-5, but you have his teammate Rival, who's absolutely heated up this past 2 weeks. And JJ, the man himself, going positive. And I say this, I will put the stats on Twitter if need be. When JJ goes positive, likely a win for Fluffy Aimers will follow suit.
Oh, most definitely. JJ is another one of those big players that you were mentioning who could really turn the tide in favor of Fluffy Aimers in one of these games. Now, we're about a minute in, and so far, SSGA don't really have a ton of control. Really, the only player in the building is Recited. Everybody else from Fluffy Aimers right now is kind of just either outside or in like the entry portions of the map, and Deity will be felled first by Rampy, so now an opening pick going the favor of SSG Academy, and that will enable Rampy to get a lot more confident here on his roam game as he looks to hunt down Recited over by Kitchen. With Fluffy Aimers being on the back foot here, Rampy has a lot more freedom to go for this, but no! Recited has the right read, will end his reign of terror on the top floor, and now Fluffy Aimers are very much right back in this round.
Yeah, instantly retaking that map control. It wasn't really control that was held very high. JJ getting another one. And now this is forces them to go back into sight. But Fluffy Aimers, they have control of it.
Everything going Fluffy Aimers' way. JJ looking to get the plant down. His Focal's just trapped in library. Will get one with the M590 as he works his way back, but he's got a death mark on the Deimos working against him. A nice shot there as well. Another M590 kill for Focal, but still very much a precarious spot the Mute finds himself in right now. He's got a lot of work yet to be done and not a lot of time as the clock is working against him. He's going to have to go for a drop here at some point to get his way back in. Looks to be coming in from Mezzanine. Does he spot the player over by Dining? He does, but he misses the shots. A crucial miss there from the Mute, losing most of his HP. Everything going Recited's way in this engagement. The time almost past the point of no return. This almost seems like a formality at this point. And the M590 will not work. Recited's better in that situation. And Fluffy Aimers, 5-3 now.
It really looks like translating over to this second half, SSG Academy is simply flustered. They're just feeling too much pressure before they even have a chance to really deal with it or even consider what is going on in front of them. A lot of the times when we actually see success is simply from those one-off plays like we saw from Rampy. And very warranted, SSG Academy is going to be taking their time out. I think this is a perfect point in the map where we can really say that SSG Academy has no control on Chalet, whether it be in those entry engagements, in the actual executions, or even understanding what is going on the attack. It is really going back to that point that it really looks like SSG Academy is having a struggle time trying to figure out what Fluffy Aimers are really doing.
I think another thing worth pointing out here, Jabates has been playing a lot of first entry operators. We saw in the first half when they were on attack, he was playing a ton of Ashe. And having somebody like Jabates not showing up here on that role is a huge hindrance to your team. So I think really going into the last couple rounds of this map, Jabates needs to go huge here. And if he doesn't, it's going to be a continuous struggle for SSG Academy because they've had a few great individual moments from players like Mike W, but they really haven't had a consistent gunner who's been showing up. And Jabates needs to be that guy going forward.
I agree 100%. And that's been a consistent problem with every Academy SSG roster aside from the LG one, because those are essentially all just pro players who are slotted into that team. But again, we saw this, with Jabates coming in, trying to pick up some of that slack that we saw from a player like Focal. But again, you just need a player to really step up. And then going against Fluffy Aimers does you absolutely no favors, because I've talked about it. This is such a deep roster that you can really go into any situation and expect any player to step up. Recited stepping up in these past couple rounds, getting 2 kills, previously going 4 and 6. JJ 7 and 3, plus 4 kills in his overall KD. And also Rival continuing to have a very good game after having a slow couple of months after that major run they had all the way back in May.
You know what I find really interesting? This is the first round out of the 3 that we've seen so far from Fluffy Aimers where JJ's been playing a shield. They finally bring out the Monty here, and like you and I were talking about earlier on, when Fluffy Aimers play shield, specifically the Monty, when it's JJ, it greatly increases their chance at success on attack. They have a much higher win percentage when they play Monty versus when they don't. And generally, you can kind of tell when they do it. They're much quicker with their attacks. They're much more vigilant with their map control because they've got that big, I guess, bulletproof cam that's just walking forward throughout the map, feeding information to the gunners on this team. Well, right now, once again, it's kind of been that slow start. I would not imagine that continues to be the case.
Yeah, again, we can just really look out how every time that Fluffy Aimers get control of a certain point of map, this time being top Mez, they stop in their tracks and then immediately go and send in their second deployment of drones, trying to get a second installment of intel, not making sure they don't work off of old calls, old intel they got from drones shot previously, and making sure that every time they push into a new position, all of the intel that they have is brand new.
While JJ will continue to lumber his way forward, he spots a player, actually 2 players inside the piano, so that should be a perfect and easy cutoff here for these 2 entry members of SSG. And indeed, there you go, Rival and Deity, both with 2 massive entry kills. Now Vill's isolated inside a piano, gets knocked to his feet, and will be fouled quickly by JJ. Everything going Fluffy AIMERS' way here. How about another one for Recited? Match point for Fluffy AIMERS on map 1.
I'm very worried about SSG. Because Fluffy AIMERS, whether or not be a complete flawless round and they save every single player live, going in with that flawless round, but every single time that they actually attack a point of the map that has relatively 2 to 3 players, that has a great occupation of player numbers from SSG on the defense, they just completely deal with every single player. And this has been a playstyle that JJ has set up specifically for this Fluffy AIMERS team all the way back to a month ago in E3, where if they see a problem, whether that be a player or the point of the map that they have to take, not only will they use all their utility, but they will deal with that player very first and very quickly. They will not leave a problem. They will not leave a player straggling, whether it be on the realm or right extending outside of the map. Every time they see something that they need to deal with, they will make sure that they put focus on it and do it with swift quickness. And again, this goes back to my point that every time that we see SSG get into engagement, they don't necessarily look ready for it.
This is the first time that we've seen the snowmobile site from SSG Academy here. I'm really curious to see how they play it out, because we've really only seen them play kitchen and bar to this point, and those sites have a lot of potential for like solo roams and just general off-site holds. Here, really, you are kind of limited with what off-site holds you can do because of the fact that it's kind of a more condensed bottom floor. But right now, it seems pretty heavy from SSG Academy, as you've got Jabates all the way on the top floor. I'm not sure exactly where everybody else is. There's 3 players currently on the site, so there's at least 1 more off roaming. And it looks to be Rampy, who's over by Library, kind of playing a cutoff angle for Jabates to safely get back to the site. Look for both Rampy and Jabates to be a key factor in this game, because like I mentioned last round, Jabates has been kind of getting off to a slow start here, and he really needs to go big on this roam to give SSG Academy a chance here. And right now, Fluffy AIMERS seem to be just bypassing that and going directly for the site itself.
Yeah, this is absolutely huge, because if Fluffy AIMERS are able to read that this snowmobile part of the bomb site is relatively more opened and a little bit easier to attack and get a position on, then they could backstab completely, again, catch this defense off guard. But it looks like that Fluffy AIMERS are going to put all their focus and attention onto this boiler push, trying to get that bomb over by Wine, not trying to take off any player, any focus onto that main breach, just trying to apply a little bit of split focus as Focal gets one onto Deity.
That's another thing that's been a struggle for SSGA here, has been those entry kills, and that's a good start for SSGA here in this round. Deity being off the board isn't necessarily a huge loss because you've already got the main snowmobile wall open, but that's another big one. As Recited now falls, there's a quick trade back from Rival, however, to make things a 3 versus 4 and keep things a little bit more manageable. But look at this, JJ on 2 HP, and now another one dead as Focal at close range, and another M590 kill coming out in the last 2 rounds. Rival now felled, and you've got a 2 HP Monty and Emilio on the ace, left to try and deal with multiple shields and multiple long-range angles from SSGA. That's a nice kill, though, however, as Emilio baits Rampy into his crossfire to now make it a 2v3. And JJ looks to potentially walk in towards the site here to get another kill for Emilio, and maybe a plant could potentially come here soon. JJ will attempt it. Emilio will have a huge task here on the coverage. He looks away at the last second, loses his life to the player in blue. Focal with another kill, and now it's JJ all alone. Focal with another one, and SSG Academy stay alive in this map.
Focal, the team IGL, absolutely going huge in that round. And a big misplay and a big misread from Fluffy AIMERS. And on the contrary, a great read into where Fluffy AIMERS, majority of their attackers and their plan are where they wanted to hit the site, that being over by bottom blue and boiler. SSG Academy, they were ready for it, but way before they even got all the players over, way before Rival jumped in, they were getting that wall open. And it really goes to show that if SSG can really read into these attacks well and just get the required manpower to just prevent these plants, prevent these quick takes into these points of the maps, whether it be an extension or the site itself, then there won't be a problem. And it really goes back to my point that SSG Academy throughout this entire first map really essentially has been playing a little bit in the dark.
It's a good start. There's still a long way to go from OT, but got to take it one step at a time here. We go back to bar. Really curious to see what SSG Academy does here. I feel like they need to play it a little bit more closer to the site because last time we were here, we saw them get kind of punished severely by the fact that they left their site a little bit soft. You saw players like JJ just run right into the middle of bar, and that was a huge factor in the fact that SSG Academy got picked off one by one as they fell back towards the site. There's a bit of early aggression from Vil to maybe put a little bit of fear into the hearts of Fluffy Aimers, but only a little bit of damage done to Emilio. No more than that. So all 5 members of Fluffy Aimers still very much alive and kicking in the early portions of this round. And they'll start to go about their business, start to go for a little bit of early drone work, and maybe see if they can't find an isolation and a kill onto Jabates.
I really love the plethora of not only execution utility like on Emilio with the Capital, but also you have that Twitch to get rid of that defender utility, like perhaps maybe a Legion mine to the default cams, but also on top of that, getting rid of those Flores mines is going to be absolutely huge, especially if you want to do try to do a quick dash rush into the site as soon as you get that map control. But again, Jabates is going to continue to play in these first entry positions, going to continue to put his life in jeopardy, trying to shut down this entry pick. It's been a problem that he's really been dealing with this entire first map, but I do love that he's continuing to put himself in this position, continuing to give himself that opportunity to have success in these early rounds.
It's going to be really interesting to see what Recited does on the Nook here. He's kind of over by Trophy by where Jabates was last playing, but it seems as though Jabates has kind of fallen back a little bit. Deity as well up above has made his entryway in towards office. Right now, Fluffy Aimers are doing a pretty good job of taking some initial map control. They're a little bit slow right now in terms of time. They've got just under half the round to go and not really a lot of vertical operators to work with, so they're going to need to maybe get an opening pick for themselves and try to clear out an area in the site that they can go plant on. And they also need to really be careful about Jabates, because Jabates on that Oryx could have a really big impact here.
Yeah, again, they're just simply making sure that he wasn't going to be in the position to flank a huge second opening, and it's all going the way of SSG Academy with all up to Deity in the 1v4.
Well, Deity was kind of the first one in the building on the top floor, and he will be the last one alive, and he's got Jabates to worry about behind him. Just narrowly gets out of dodge there. And that'll alert Deity as to where Jabates is currently at. He'll look to push his way back over towards the upper portions of the site itself. He knows that there's a ward behind the shield, but he's not ready for the fight, and Vil will end his life there. SSG Academy draw us back within 1 of OT.
Again, SSG Academy reading in to the very first and main push on that top floor, going into top blue in top mez, and having the allocated support, whether it be those 3 to 4 player positions in that position, 2 players on blue, 1 to 2 over by Mez and Library, but also having that utility, making sure that you had that warded for when that smoke came out, so you were able to cut off that verticality that they were trying to remove. Again, it's just SSG Academy not only being prepared, but putting themselves in a relatively winning position that we haven't seen in rounds previously, even going all the way back onto their attack. And it really goes to show that that timeout obviously did not have immediate success, but in the long run, it helped them get a grasp on not only what Fluffy Aimers were doing, but what SSG Academy needed to do on the defense to push themselves on to match point.
Another thing that I think is really interesting as we've gone through the past 2 rounds and SSG Academy have started to claw back into this, it seems as though Fluffy Aimers are getting a little bit overconfident. That last round in particular, they tried to push the top of Library stairs without even attempting to clear out their shield. And I think that was a big blunder by them. They allowed the Warden to just play safely behind the shield and get a plethora of picks as they just fed ones to him. And I think that that was something that you really didn't need to do if you were Fluffy Aimers. So I really want to keep an eye on if Fluffy Aimers are just trying to rely a little bit too much on their gun skill alone, and they're kind of vacating some of the utility that they're bringing. Because sure, you can have individual gun skill, that's great, but if you're not clearing out power positions from SSG Academy, your gun skill can only get you so far.
If you saw that little ace charge on the dining wall, as of now, it is muted. I'm not entirely sure if Fluffy Aimers are aware of this. Eventually they will be aware that it hasn't gone off. but that's kind of a position, especially with having that Brava on the board. It can really go off at any moment. And not only can it go off at any moment, you don't need the ace in that position. And what an absolute killer run out from Jabates to shut down JJ. This is exactly what we've been looking from him for this entire game.
Yeah, it finally has an impact in a round where it matters the most. Vocal as well, looking to get aggressive on a player over by Solarium. A C4 will go out, but that player is still safely out on the rappel. So no damage done there, nothing lost for either team besides that C4 itself. Crackstinger going to go in there from Deity, and another Dokkaebi call going to rain out here to try and push some of these SSG defenders from their power positions out on the roam. A jump in is punished by Mike W, and Rampy with another one. Everything going SSGA's way here. Rampy with yet another kill to add to his tally. And it's Emilio to stave off OT for Fluffy Aimers, and he will die inside of West Main, making a flawless round to propel SSG Academy into OT on map number 1.
SSG losing the first 2 rounds, coming back with another 3, then going on to their attack, losing 3 in a row, and said, we'll do the exact same to you, going 3 back to back to back. And now we get a Fluffy Aimers timeout and hopefully not a rehost. And this is going to be, in my opinion, a great opportunity, because whether or not SSG Academy has been getting these flawless untraded rounds, Fluffy Aimers have continued to hold control, but they've simply just let it slip a little bit. Every time, every round, especially on the attack, where they started to lose that man count, where they started to completely fall off the cliff, it was their mistake. Not having enough new intel on the positions, allowing those positions to go completely unknown, and then those crossfires also to be set up without the knowledge of Fluffy Aimers. So a lot of mistakes from Fluffy Aimers, but on the contrary, a lot of players like Jabates getting those such needed entry picks. But on top of it, Rampy also picking up on the kill board.
Yeah, I want to take a moment and just kind of like appreciate this scoreboard right here. Sure, we're missing 2 players, but in general, both these teams are relatively even in terms of their kills and deaths on the board. And I think that speaks volumes to the overall just fracking potential that both teams have. You and I have been talking at a multitude of occasions throughout this game about how everybody on Fluffy Aimers is very much capable of just coming alive and taking over a game. But I think we're seeing here is more of like the overall team composition and just team skill as a whole coming alive, because you're not having that one standout player on both teams, really. You're having good contributions from everybody in multiple rounds. Specifically in that last round, you saw players like Jabates and Rampy, who had been really quiet, come back to life. And that's something that's really nice to see. And that kind of speaks to how even this game is at a whole.
I agree. And I think in turn, because you have every player essentially shooting, you don't have that 1 or 2 hero players that are really stepping ahead of the others in the kill and entry department. When you have those problems, when you have those mistakes, it really is shown across every single player, and that's why you're losing these rounds back to back to back, just like you won them. And I think taking this timeout, having this breather, is going to be able, as we talked about in the pre-show, SSG is a team that really relies and uses that momentum as fuel, but coming after tactical pause, allowing both teams to talk to each other, then a technical pause is going to completely just shut down that momentum. Let the players talk to each other, especially on Fluffy Aimers, take a breather and really realize what is happening in this matchup, because they've lost complete control, but they're still in the position to take it back.
As we get into things on overtime, it's worth noting SSG gets to start on defense, the spot they just came from, where they are on a little bit of a win streak, where they've won 3 rounds in a row, and they'll start things off down in Snowmobile. I'm really going to be interested to see what Fluffy Aimers decide to do here, because last time we came here, they really focused on taking spots over by Big Garage, and they didn't really play much over for Fireplace and that side of the map. Bringing out the Ram here indicates that they might want to change that, and I think that's a good idea for them, because when they tried to go for the backside push over by Wine Cellar, they had initial success with the Monty, but they kind of got held at the gates of the site by some of the players over inside of Pillar and over inside of Blue. So I think it's a good idea to switch things up and really adjust to where SSG might be a little bit weaker.
I agree 100%. And SSG Academy, again, going down to this basement bomb site that they had little to no success on when they defended it, or when they attacked it, rather. And now, translating over after they won it once on the defense, it's simply going to be going down to Fluffy Aimers needing that split push. We saw that they didn't get that wall open over by our facing car garage so late into the point where it's essentially a 2v4. So not only do they need to work this vertical, make sure that they get both walls open and have that split pressure, they need to continue to apply that pressure, not fall off of it, and make sure, as I said time and time again, give themselves as many opportunities and many entry points into the bomb site as possible. So if one is cut off from the defense, you'll have another option to fall back onto.
I really like some of this control that both Emilio and Resida have taken initially. They're kind of creating cutoff angles for any potential roamers. They've got somebody over by blue. They've got JJ, who's all the way inside of dining, but also you've got that player over by Trophy and Solarium to potentially stop anybody on the top floor, who it doesn't look like anybody's up there, as everybody is currently back on the site except for Bill, who's over by Library Stairs. But the idea is good there to make sure that you aren't losing any free picks or anything like that on the roam. But there's JJ who just swings the wine cellar door and ends Fokal's life deep in the site. That's the smoke off the board. A huge pick there to open things up.
Still not having that bottom blue wall open or that trench wall. Sure, it's still going to have that single wall open, but again, it's just so much pressure that needs to be applied early on. And when you have a defender utility like a Two-Brow, it's going to really waste the time and really push SSG Academy into a very comfortable position, but not if they continue to let these picks fly off the board.
Recited with another kill now. 5 versus 3 in favor of Fluffy Aimers. Rampy needs to go big here, deep inside of blue. He'll be the primary person to stop any potential entries from Fluffy Aimers, but he has to be careful because he might overexpose himself. A good opener there onto JJ. That's the diffuser down and ace off the board. Another one potentially for Rampy now, as Recited is falling. That's Finka down as well. A huge two-piece there for Rampy, and he's still allowed to persist inside of blue. Rival tries to cross from him in front of him as well, but Rampy overextends. That's a huge blunder there by Rampy, and now Fluffy Aimers back in favor of the man advantage. Rival as well looking to go for the plant. Deity walks in and kills Jabates. And now it's Vil all alone up above in a 1 versus 3. He has no control to work with. Missing his shots on the player deep inside of Wine Cellar. He'll have to retake down the main staircase all the way through both sites and take multiple long angles. It will not go well for him at all. Deity with the round ender. And it's match point once again for Fluffy Aimers.
That was an absolutely huge round from JJ Ballsack. Initially, you saw him take that ace canister or the ace charge in his hand, was looking at entertaining the idea of getting that hatch open and dining, but instead, he opted to just put that back into his pocket, run down blue stairs, take that aggressive play, hearing that smoke reinforced all the way from upstairs, keep in mind, get that pick, but not only was the pick the biggest choice he made, but because that hatch continued to stay open, because Fluffy Aimers' entire game plan was to flood into the site, that retake that we saw from the Jaeger upstairs was not able to successfully shut down the plant because that hatch was shut.
Fluffy Aimers with a massive round to propel themselves back onto match point here in map number 1. And they now get to go back onto the defense, where they had a lot of success starting out this map. They went 2-0 on Bar and Kitchen. And that is the site we will go to for their only defense here in overtime. It's going to be Kitchen. And once again, a very similar lineup to what we've been seeing them bring out in many of their defensive occasions thus far. You see them bringing out operators like Cade, like the Two-Brow, and like the Castle, which will help create a lot of safety for some of these off-site holds that they like to go for. They've been doing this a lot, where they sit up above, they hold the primary walls in towards dining, and then they just make SSG Academy try to bargain for some of this control, which is so much harder to do when you don't have any of those angles created by opening the hard walls.
Again, a plethora of utility that is really forcing SSG to deal with it. Having those castle barricades, the Two-Brows to make sure that those walls stay closed, a Maestro, and on top of that, you have a Cade. This is just so much utility that is simply there to waste the time of SSG Academy. And even if they're able to get a pick like Mike W does onto Recited, they're able to fall back. A very questionable run out and what could lead to a loss on this map.
A really big loss there, losing that Two-Brow. That too, bro. Last time we came here, when FA was on the defense, had so much impact in slowing down SSG Academy's attack. So not having that on the board and being the first person to die, mind you, is a big loss. And now SSG Academy are using that to take a ton of control for themselves. You've already got Jabates working his way down below to potentially see if he can't spot the Electro Claw that might be hindering his team's entrance into the top portions of the map. Doesn't look like he's been able to spot it thus far, but still he's going to keep looking for it because that's a big piece of utility that they need to clear, and they finally will get it. So now they can use the Selma charges to open that main wall right up and try to put some pressure on the top floor.
BT just playing and toying with his life, trying to get a pick back. A player below, a player right outside his breach to his right, and they haven't identified it, and it's Mike W. Eventually, these questionable swings and plays, this over-aggression from Fluffy AIMERS is absolutely punishing them this round tenfold.
Now SSG Academy with a massive lead here as we enter the final minute. Amelia still up above. We'll need to go big here as there's multiple SSG Academy players that could potentially walk into his line of sight soon. Looks like they might be trying to take from Piana here, but overall SSGA are still pretty much spread out throughout the top portions of this map. Now Amelia will get one. That's the Maestro, but no more than that as he's only good for one, maybe another one, but Mike W with another quick trade back. And that was JJ all alone to try and save map 1 for his team, or maybe, just maybe, SSG Academy will send us to 15 rounds on the first map. The Cade's been droned out. It's just a matter of time now, trying to clear him out at this point. But he's been allowed to change positions, and maybe we'll have the opportunity to work his way back up, or find a freebie on this player working his way down Solar Stairs. Vocal doesn't really seem to have an idea of the fact that JJ has changed positions, so this should be a relatively easy one here for JJ to make it more manageable. There's the first kill of the first out of 3 that he needs. Mike W will get this plant down, but where's Rampy on the coverage? It's perfect position. It's a perfect kill. It's round 15. SSG Academy not done yet on map 1.
Again, Mike W absolutely throwing a life raft for SSG Academy. I was eventually going to say that, why are you putting him in this flex support situation? Why are you not putting him in these entry positions? But on the contrary, that is absolutely where you need a player like Mike W. He can find use in any situation. If you put him on a player like Ace, where he's always going to be on that front line, where he's going to be in a bunch of different positions and situations around the map, and you give that opening, you give that possibility to a player like Mike W, where he can really reside at any point of the map, it really puts you in a position where you just have that flexibility. And on top of that, he also can get plant downs with it.
I think it's really worth noting one of the big reasons that SSG Academy have gotten to this point. Really the fact that Rampy has woken up. Mind you, he had a little bit of a rough start to this game, but he has come back in a storming fashion. All the way back to 12-10 now. He's been really keeping his team in some of these rounds, but also, like you were saying, Mike W has been that really big, heavy lifter for this team to keep them from losing to Fluffy AIMERS on map 1, and I would really like to see them continue to do that here. They're playing both on, we'll kind of say a little bit more supportive operators specifically for Mike W, but I think in particular, Rampy is in a great lineup, in a great situation to potentially have massive impact.
Yeah, this was also relatively a problem I had with the rules. Again, I don't understand the thought behind every single choice that Rockstar makes, but, you know, putting him on, again, just like Mike W, on relatively a more flexible role. This is a role that Rampy has been played, but in a position where he is on a team where he has so much experience, so much IQ in a singular player, you just really need to use that. And that's exactly what they've been doing on the second half after taking that time. It was making sure that they put Rampy in these positions where he can really make use of his gun, try and shut down those players, and really get answers back.
Well, the first logic bomb will go out, and as a result, Rampy will lose most of his HP in the opening minute of the round. Vocal looks to stick around for a little bit longer, but he's quickly being lit up and shut down from outside of mezzanine. Fluffy, rival with 2 big kills to open up this round. Jabates as well, losing most of his HP. And now, SSG Academy, in a split-second notice, are down 2 bodies and have so much control forfeited. But Vil will quickly trade things back to make it a little bit more manageable. Now a 4v3.
Yeah, not only that, but Vil is still continuing to choose to stay in this position, make sure he doesn't give any map control away. He gets a down onto Amelia, but with that Monty, it's just going to be so dire. Eventually, he's going to be dealt with, and now just a 4v2 for Fluffy Aimers as they look to take map 1.
Emilio has been picked back up here. I believe that was JJ handling those duties. The only problem is they don't really have a way to break through this castle barricade. And it's going to mean Jabates can stick around for a little bit longer. But as the Monty starts to push forward, it's going to be that much more difficult for him to actually find value with sticking in this position. Mike W as well has been isolated by the Deathmark tracker on the Deimos. And now SSG Academy looks to fall back towards the site here. As we enter the final minute, they have a lot of weight on their shoulders, especially with that Monty still bearing down on them. They are playing together, but a nice shot through the window from Deity. Deity with 2. Map 1 is over. It went all 15 rounds, but Deity ends it out. 8-7 is the scoreline, and Fluffy Aimers are 1 round away from the grand final.
Talk about an absolute barn burner, but Fluffy Aimers eventually are able to patch those holes, the mistakes that they were making throughout that entire matchup, and again, Rival stepping up, absolutely huge for his team, but also the overall coordination, especially on the attack for Fluffy Aimers, was absolutely unbearable. Every single isolated roamer or singular player that's not even off the bomb site was dealt with in timely fashion. It really goes to show on not only how difficult, but just how quick it really can be to deal with a team like Fluffy Aimers.
Yeah, it's also worth noting, I was talking about earlier some of the individual contributions from some of these players and how it was overall pretty even on the scoreboard. But in that last round in particular, Deity had a less than average start to the map. I believe it was 5-9 at one point, but he really brought it back there in overtime. He had a huge clutch round there in round number 15 to propel his team to a map win. So it's also worth noting that that kind of plays in to the storyline of the fact that these players can just come alive at moments and help win rounds and maps for your team. So it's really fantastic to see this roster that Fluffy Aimers have constructed.
Yeah, I agree. And having players like Jabates that are, in theory, should be your first entry, just be completely shut down in that position time and time after again, even though he found a little bit of success in that second half, is simply something that cannot happen. Again, these small mistakes, these players that are missing in action that can't perform, is going to be punished tenfold by a team like Fluffy Aimers as they look to go into that second map and get that 2-0 that they so wanted.
Well, that's it for map number 1. Fluffy Aimers steal Chalet out from under SSG's nose. But SSG look to rebound on border. Map number 2 coming up when we come back. are back. Map number 1 was as close as it can possibly get. 8-7 was the scoreline on Chalet in favor of Fluffy Aimers here in this XGS Season number 7 semi-final. And Goose, looking back at that last map, I think the biggest thing that hindered SSG Academy's chances at winning out that map was the fact that on so many occasions they were relying on way too many hero plays from some of their players.
I agree 100%, especially when you have a player like Jabates that simply is not showing up, requiring Mike W, who has been, in theory, that second entry player going for this matchup, 12-9 or 11-9. And then also having Rampy for the very first time step up to be the second kill leader. That's something we've not seen all the way back to their very last group stage game. So absolutely huge, but it simply was not enough. And on top of that, throughout this entire first map, it really does look like that SSG Academy simply just did not have a great idea of what they wanted to do. A lot of the times not having the intel that was needed and really approaching and played through these rounds of Chalet kind of in the dark.
I mean, even then, if you look at it, it started out 6-3 for Fluffy Aimers, and SSG Academy kind of was able to claw things back there.
He's muted. All right. Okay, well, I'll go back to talking. Again.
Oh, no, I muted myself on Discord.
No,
I was saying that, like, Fluffy Aimers was up, like, 6-3, and then they started things off really well, and then they kind of fumbled the bag a little bit in those last 3 rounds of regulation to where they kind of skipped some important steps, rather, such as, like, opening main walls, playing vertical in some instances, but setting our sights towards border, Goose. You and I were talking during the break, and we're a little bit worried about SSG Academy here because this is a map that they have not liked historically throughout this season. They have banned it a ton. Not only just banned it, but they have first banned it 5 out of their 7 games. They really do not like to come here.
Yep, in total, that ban is going to be 6 times out of those 7 games. And it's just a situation where we talked about in the pre-show of that maybe SSG simply was hiding strats. I don't think that's the fact. I think in this case and scenario, they let border go because simply previously they didn't like it, but going up against Fluffy Aimers, it was one of those maps that they really just said, I'd rather have this than maybe a Labs. And I think that is kind of the best case scenario, but best case scenario when you win your map pick and you don't turn this into a best of 2 and you can push yourself onto a 3rd map. This entire map and how it plays and just the way it's formatted, it's a very smaller map. Those trades are going to be very common compared to Chalet, where there are very few in between. So you're going to have to be ready to really feel that pressure, really read and adapt quickly, and that's a problem that we saw with SSG Academy on Chalet.
Yeah, not only that, but I feel like this map in total really favors Fluffy Aimers' playstyle. They're a little bit slower initially in some of the early rounds on attack, but then once they find what they want to do, they just flip a switch and they just go. And it's really good to see when they can do that, especially with some of the individual gunners they've got, which really plays into their favor on border. But not only that, they've played this map before this season. They beat Final Form 7-3, which is a fairly dominant scoreline. It's kind of what you'd expect from a team like Fluffy Aimers. They have really shown that they are comfortable here.
Yeah, I mean, it is Final Form, but I finally, and I think SSG Academy not only banning Monty is maybe we could say a JJ thing on paper. I think it's more of just removing that operator for a map like Border that we talked about. It's very small. Having a player like Monty, maybe even perhaps a Blitzer, won't get as much success than a Monty, can take so much map control so quickly. And again, apply that pressure onto the defenders, which SSG Academy will be starting on. And also Fluffy Aimers continuing to ban out that Valkyrie, continuing to eliminate the plethora of IQ and intel operators that we have on the defense. And SSG Academy also taking off Azami, getting a little bit worried because it really feels like that's a ban that doesn't exactly go towards a map like Border, even though it is a very good ban. We saw it happen on Chalet, and they didn't really get a whole lot of use out of it.
I really like both those defender bans. They are the same bans that we saw back on Chalet, but rightfully so. Like I was talking about on Chalet, Valkyrie gives you a ton of information, and even more so on a map like Border, because like you were saying, it is very small. There's a lot of like open spaces that you can use to gain information on multiple rooms at the same time, specifically looking over towards like Mountain and over maybe by 90. But not only that, the Azami can create a lot of cutoffs in some of these big open rooms like security that you really don't want to have to deal with. And that will also in turn free up some of the compositions that you can bring out on the attack, because you don't have to bring out as much utility clear as you otherwise might have. You can maybe bring a little bit more execute utility, like a Deimos, or not a Deimos, rather, like a Grim or something like that, which will not be present in this round, but still, in general, this lineup from Fluffy Aimers is really solid. You've got Flank Watch for potentially over by East Stairs, you've got the information, and you've got pretty much everything. You've got Hard Breach, utility, flashes. I love it.
I really love putting Rampy on that Aruni, giving him not only the DMR, but putting him in a situation where he is that first and second entry player, that defender that the Fluffy Aimers will meet very first in their very first encounter, or it will be Jabates, depending on where they want to push for. But either way, it's going to be Rampy for the very first pick.
Losing the Nomad there is not necessarily ideal, because you haven't even really gotten to establish yourself in the building. And not only that, you really can't do anything to stop any of those runouts like you just saw from Rampy. So, pretty big loss there in the opening 30 seconds for Fluffy Aimers. But as always, you just gotta press on and continue with the cards that you're dealt. And right now, it seems to be pretty slow from Fluffy Aimers. You've got Rival who's working his way in over by East Air, but other than that, there isn't really much coming in from Fluffy Aimers. They're all pretty much still just sitting outside and trying to gather intel, which sure is a great idea, but at some point, you have to make a play, and that play might be coming here, as Vil inside of Office has the Logic Bomb raining out against him. And Fluffy Aimers look ready to potentially work their way in to try and greet him, but no, Vil instead will just opt to play his life and fall right back towards the site.
Yeah, again, opting to put Rival on that first entry role could perhaps give them some dividends, but for now, it doesn't look like that Fluffy Aimers have a great idea on how to approach these extended positions like Jabates or Rampy over by Break and CC, and because of they essentially just try to ignore it, try to find a way around these positions and try to choke out these players closer to site. But right now, it simply just isn't working whatsoever.
As we approach the minute mark in this round, Fluffy Aimers still with the man disadvantage. They haven't really been able to leverage any control towards some of these off-site power positions that SSG Academy are holding. That mirror window's not doing them any favors, and neither is Rampy, as Rampy gets another one. Jabates as well getting in on the action, and now it's recited. Left in a 1v5. Still got that Logic Bomb to potentially assist him. But other than that, not really much going for him. Jabates from long range with the UMP will end out that round, and how about a flawless start to board? A really nice play there on a map that we really haven't seen much from them on.
Yeah, and again, we talked about that this could perhaps just be a map that SSG Academy have been hiding purposely to use in these playoff positions and just be ready to use those threats completely untested on game day and without the knowledge of their opponents. But a very good round from SSG Academy, and on the contrary, a very poor round from Fluffy Aimers. After losing that first pick, throughout the next half of that round, throughout the next minute 30, they didn't even entertain, push anyone over into that CC and Break position. Eventually, they were forced to just push in some players, try to get a pick late on because they had absolutely no control, absolutely no other entryway into Office and Fountain. And because of that, those two players were ready. And again, it's those mistakes, those rounds where Fluffy Aimers are looking for an easy way into the building, an easy way into the site, that you're simply not going to be allowed to be done by a team like SSG Academy going on to this second map.
Well, like you typically see so many times from teams who play down on the first floor, an upstairs extension will be required for SSG Academy here on their second defense. It's going to be extended all the way as far as security and armory, which is a little bit of a bold play. It sure is something that you see sometimes, but I feel like that will sometimes mean that your defending operators and utility are a little bit spread thin. And Fluffy Aimers, being the team that they are, might look to capitalize that, especially with Mike W being the only one on the site right now. You can see initially, Amelia will not only get the opening pick, but also other players on Fluffy Aimers are quickly working their way in here. Mike W on the site will get a kill onto Emilio, as it looks like he might have tried to work his way in, but see, exactly, Rival has been allowed to just walk right in and take site control. JJ will get the plant down, but Rampy's trying to keep his team in terms of man count. Deity with great coverage inside the bathroom. The plant will go down, and now SSG Academy have to scramble here to try and go for a retake. Bill will work his way in over towards the bottom of East Staircase. He spots a player. Nice shot from Bill onto JJ to equalize the man count back to a 2v2. The logic bomb going out here from both the AIMERS. It's now going to be Focal all alone in a 1v2 at the bottom of East Stairs, trying to retake this position from where initially Fluffy AIMERS came from. But with the time expiring, it's not going to go very well for him at all. Rival does some damage. Now it seems like it all might just be over in this round. Fluffy AIMERS looking to extend out the last few seconds of this round, and Rival will pad his stats. Round number 2 goes to Fluffy AIMERS.
A great gap and a complete opening of bomb site that Fluffy AIMERS spotted. If you saw that entire back bathroom wall reinforced, the little entry point with that rotate on that single wall going into offices shot out with that castle barricade allowed Emilio to walk into East, down the stairs, shut down the player of Mike W trying to retake, and the site after that was completely free. SSG Academy just putting too much emphasis on that roam game, just completely leaving that site essentially empty, giving that opportunity for Fluffy AIMERS to strike. And I talked about it, as soon as JJ or anyone else on Fluffy AIMERS spots a gap, spots a problem that they can deal with, they will deal with it not only relatively shortly, but they'll make it their first priority. And that's why we saw that round go completely lopsided to Fluffy AIMERS. And SSG Academy, they're going to be going back to the same bomb site. We're realizing the colossal mistake that they made. Not going to be making it this time again. That's going to be an opportunity that will not be given to Fluffy AIMERS as SSG Academy look to take the lead yet again.
Well, once again, we still kind of have that same sort of heavy roam extension. You see Rampy all the way over inside of security once again, but you also see a multitude of players over by, like, the top east. You also see a player inside of office. Once again, Mike W, the only player in the site itself, which once again kind of lends into the fact that Fluffy AIMERS might be able to capitalize off the fact that the site is soft. Initially they won't, but a nice entry there from Recited through the drone hole kills Mike W, and now the site is absolutely free. Fluffy AIMERS might look to capitalize on this by taking control not only above, but also potentially down below as well. Initially though, it doesn't seem like they're too keen to capitalize on this control, as they're not exactly sure on how site is, or how soft the site is rather, itself. They're instead opting to take an engagement with Rampy, which is a good idea in theory, but you also don't want to risk too many bodies away from the site.
Yeah, almost an absolutely huge pick. An answer back from Rampy. Jabates and Rampy in this position that we saw in the very first round, continuing to try to hold this, paired with the player inside. A run out, but it doesn't result with anything. And it's Recited and Jabates to get the answer back. Jabates and Rampy still stuck in this CC position.
And now down to a 3v3 as Jabates is fighting his team back into this round. But here's a quick take from JJ and Rival. Recited now felled from above by Focal, however, but the players from Fluffy AIMERS have just burst into the site. Does Focal have any way to stop this? It seems like he might initially. Rival with good coverage as JJ attempts the plant. Now a post-plant situation coming in as Rival still looking to cover from long range. There's a player up above that seems to be known about by both these players on Fluffy AIMERS, but they're still just kind of taking fights that they don't really need to in this post-plant situation. Here comes an engagement as Focal drops through the hatch. JJ's now down, so it's left all alone with Rival on low HP. He's got a lot of work to be done, but thankfully the time is ticking in his favor. SSG Academy have to go, and down on the Focal. Rival could potentially go huge here in back-to-back rounds for Fluffy AIMERS, almost to the point of no return. Rampy, what can you do here? What do you need to do? Pistol out, looking for the player prone on the floor, and he wins it! Rampy clutches out the 1v1 with no time to spare, however. Fluffy AIMERS will win out the round on time.
He only had 1 second left. If he had just had enough information, if he had just made that swing in bathroom just a little bit quicker, that could have been an SSG round. But again, not only was it a huge gap on that bomb site, but a completely different gap, a completely different take from Fluffy AIMERS, taking it over by main side, going through construction, getting it through the back into bathroom, and then having essentially what is one of the most difficult retakes in post plants for an attacking team. Having a player above you, that being Focal, but also a player's retaking your position, flanking you on the back line. There was absolutely no avenue for Fluffy AIMERS to have success, yet they still found it. And that idea that we talked about on map 1 of SSG Academy, playing through this entire series, playing through Chalet in the dark, continues on as they're leaving these gaps open that they're not even aware that they've made.
I'm gonna be honest. I was a little bit mesmerized by Rampy's attempt there at the clutch. I didn't even realize till after he got the kill, it was too late for him to get the defuse. It was so close, like you said. A matter of like a second or two. And Rampy could have won that. But my big question is, so far, SSG Academy have left their sights so soft. And that's a theme once again. I don't even think there's anybody on the site right now for SSG Academy. Fluffy AIMERS could capitalize on it again. It's a huge blunder that this defensive side is leaving right now. And Rival, they have a drone. Do they go for this again here? He's in the position, and he had a drone potentially. But it doesn't seem like they're fully aware. I'm not exactly sure what the play is right now, as Fluffy AIMERS are a little bit spread out. But they definitely have some sort of idea of the fact they want to clear these players up above. Mike W will fell T80 first. And now it's going to put the brakes on Fluffy AIMERS' attack for just a little bit longer.
And not only that, but that ace charge under that single wall over into hallway is going to be shot out from Jabates, or Rampy rather, who's gone absolutely huge, converting into this second map. And again, Fluffy AIMERS not really having essentially that one opening that they can really take, just looking to find the opening, maybe rather create it, but again, such a definitive and hard top floor hold, an extension by SSG Academy that Fluffy AIMERS have read into and have chosen to actually play into, rather than trying to go around and not really want to get that bomb down, scared of that vertical from the top. But Rival has taken control of CC.
About halfway through the round now. Fluffy AIMERS still looking for some sort of response. There's a couple players inside of Office that they couldn't find a kill onto, but Jabates with another kill takes down Rival. Now the line up the board. Jabates with another kill now. And it's Fluffy AIMERS finding themselves heavily on the back foot in a 2v5. As SSG Academy are continuing to play aggressive here on not only this top floor, but just throughout the map as a whole. They're going for runouts. They're quickly swinging towards Fluffy AIMERS. They're taking the fight to the attack, and I love to see that. You really want to shut down some of these entry gunners that Fluffy AIMERS have. As JJ looks to walk in here, he might be able to have some sort of impact, but everybody from SSG Academy has fallen back from this position. They're not giving up anything to Fluffy AIMERS for free.
Yeah, again, just these hardened positions. Jabates is continuing to go absolutely flawless. Rampy and Jabates, especially Rampy, continuing the success he had on from map 1 of Chalet, and now Jabates finally showing up, and it's SSG giving him time to really settle into this matchup, continuing to put him in a position to be given these opportunities to really shine in these entry positions where he has to shut down these aggressive attackers. And after an entire map, he started to actually show up, and this is exactly as I talked about in the very first map, after we saw it succeed for Fluffy AIMERS, that we needed, whether it be Jabates or another player, to really step up and shut down those entry engagements, and that's exactly what we've seen now on board.
Well, Armory has been unlocked again for SSGA, and they'll go back to it. Interestingly enough, they are reinforcing the hatch inside of security. I guess they really want to play in that spot and make sure that they're safe, that they don't get felled from down below maybe. Because JJ has been starting to show that he really likes to play this buck here on border. And I really actually like that pick because there's so much soft destruction that you can do from down below to find great value and push some of these SSG defenders out of their power positions. So it's a really great operator to bring, and one that SSGA really needs to try and shut down early on. But not only that, there is also the potential for some downstairs presence with an operator like the Solus on Jabates that you really want to be careful about, that you don't run into JJ on.
I really love pairing recited again. Rampy, oh my god, just escaping with his life. And I do love that SSG Academy, they have all the confidence behind them that they need. Keep in mind, the only 2 rounds that Fluffy AIMERS have won is that bathroom bomb site that was pretty much completely left open. These bomb sites where Fluffy AIMERS are forced to deal with this extension, forced to deal with this plethora of just positions being supported by defender utility, they haven't had a whole lot of success with it. Now translating into what is going to be the 3rd round, they're going to have to deal with it onto this top bomb floor. Again, SSG Academy doing a great job of just giving them so many different problems around the map that Fluffy AIMERS don't necessarily know where they really want to attack first.
Well, about a minute in, and so far, despite that first entry engagement, nothing really happening. And as I say that, however, Recited will eat some damage from inside of Break Room. As Fluffy Gamers are kind of being gate kept outside of the site right now. They don't really have much control working for themselves, but Deity just decides to run in and maybe pop some shots over towards a player inside of Armory. Nothing will come of that. And JJ will be down next, actually, from up above. Mike W will end that. That's the vertical working against one of the primary vertical operators in the game. A little bit ironic there, if I do say so myself. But nonetheless, now, Deity has found a gap. On to Focal now to equalize the man count back to a 4v4, but Jabates is there for another one. And SSG Academy, despite losing a body here and there, continue to hold on to this lead. Vil with an ill-advised swing, and Vil and Rampy with 2 more kills to end out that round. SSG Academy storming through these last few rounds as they find the lead once again.
I don't understand what Rival was. I don't know if he was aware there was a mirror wall, because he just walked in front of it, and the mirror was like, "Oh hey, there's just an Ashe in front of me. Let me just swing this guy with his back turned to me." And I think again it goes into the idea that right now Fluffy Aimers simply are not aware of the positions of these defenders. That one swing that we saw from Rival onto the Wamai, it was simply just preparing that if there was going to be a player there, just hoping that there was a player there. It looks like we're going to be getting a rehost, though. I'm not even sure what happened there, but we're going to be taking a little bit of a break. Potentially, most likely, going to be having to rehost lobby. But again, talking about just Fluffy Aimers not really having a great idea of that round specifically of where the positions of those defenders were. That drone work simply just wasn't really there.
I think this is kind of a tale of the tapes right now for both these teams. Because on map number 1, you and I were talking about the great coordination and team play that Fluffy Aimers were having on not only their attack and their defense, but the script has kind of been flipped on its head. In this map so far, even on the 2 rounds they won on Bathroom, they've been the ones that were doing what SSG Academy was doing on Chalet, where they're just kind of relying on these solo hero players to take space, get kills, and win rounds. And it's been having individual success, sure, because they're finding kills here and there. Everybody's getting kills and things like that. But it doesn't really work when you try to get into the late round because of the fact that you don't have the coordination. You are not joined up together, and you can't really go for that sort of like full execute that will really propel you into a round win.
Yeah, it does look like that we're actually going to be going to a quick little break, so I'll let you throw us out there as don't go anywhere far. We'll be right back for some more action on Border.
All right, well, a short little technical break there. We've got the lobby all back up and ready to go, and we're deep in the middle of Border, map number 2 of this XGS semifinal between Fluffy Aimers and SSGA. Now, we go back to Bathroom here, Goose. And Bathroom has been a site that SSG Academy have really struggled to defend. But specifically, one player on Fluffy Aimers have made their lives a nightmare, as Rival has been the perfect gap spotter for them.
Yeah. And their solution to that is going to be, again, bringing out the castle. It depends on where they use it, but most importantly, it's going to be the Fenrir. Just essentially is going to be a stop sign for those aggressive takes onto site. And if we look at the overall lineup of Fluffy Aimers, they are more than prepared to do that really just dirty work in the early round, make sure they drone out every single point, get that extension control, get the map control away from site so they continue to push those players closer to site and then apply pressure on the contrary. And you can see Vil barricading or castle barricading that exact doorway. It really enables them that they're going to be focusing on specifically this east side where Rival had all his success translating into the bomb site.
As we get things started in round number 6, I'd have to think that Fluffy Aimers is going to go for a much more conventional take here towards the site. As initially you see some of them positioning themselves over towards areas like armory and like security. But not only that, the biggest giveaway is kind of the fact that you've got that buck being brought out by Deity. It indicates that they're going to try to put a lot of emphasis on some of these vertical cutoffs on players playing off of the site, but also just above the site itself. You can kind of get some value with the skeleton key up above bathroom over inside of office. But that's not really going to be a factor if they can't get this control initially. Fluffy Aimers are actually doing a really good job of pushing their way forward. They've already got full armory control, and they can start to utilize some of the soft destruction that they've got to create angles to force these SSG players out of position.
Yeah, Fluffy Aimers is doing a great job of really applying this pressure onto this top floor very early on, so they're not forced to waste this time. So they're able to essentially try and push these players back. And with Emilio getting the very first pick onto the Jabades, that is an absolutely huge opening for them, eventually answered back by Mike W.
Big pick there, but outside on the balcony, JJ's down by Focal, and Focal will continue to just stay outside as Vil gets another kill, trying to cover his teammate and potentially work their way back towards the site. I'm not sure how Focal was able to get away there without being punished. A massive blunder by Fluffy Aimers there. And now they find themselves in a 2v4 with everybody from SSGA working their way back towards the first floor and towards the site itself. It's going to be that much harder for Recited and Emilio to actually try to find a way back into this round, because surely whenever they try to go and take a fight, there'll be somebody from SSGA ready and waiting to trade them.
On top of that, Rampy goes completely undroned, and just a huge misplay on that translation onto the attack on the top floor. And now Fluffy Aimers, not only are they in a very difficult position, but SSG Academy, they're ready for it, and Emilio is eventually dealt by Mike W.
Well, Recited falls to Focal as well in a pretty convincing round there, especially considering it was the site that Fluffy Aimers had a lot of success on. In fact, it's really the only site that they've shown any signs of life on is that Teller's site. But 2 rounds is definitely not the worst situation here for Fluffy Aimers as they swap over to the defensive side, and they'll start things off at armor here. And I'm really interested to see what style of defense do they play, because SSG Academy played a relatively aggressive one, specifically Rampy, who spread himself throughout the map and overall just spent most of that first half getting in the face of Fluffy Aimers.
Yeah, and I really think that's exactly what SSG Academy needed to do. They needed to continue to apply that pressure and make sure that they didn't give too much respect in that early round to a team like Fluffy Aimers, because they are going to absolutely eat it up. And on the contrary, now we're seeing relatively completely different sides of the trade for both teams. You can see that Fluffy Aimers going a lot more on that intel side, trying to deny the drones like we saw on SSG Academy, but this time, something we have not seen whatsoever throughout this map of Border so far is Recited bringing out the Echo. So much utility, and also DT pushing up that mirror just a little bit further onto that single wall into found, contrary to when SSG Academy had it on the single wall on that bomb site. And again, just a completely different defensive hold that we're seeing from Fluffy Aimers, and it's a great, really showing of how both of these teams are just so different.
Well, speaking of different as well, something that's different that you don't really see is an Echo. Recited in one of the more forward positions, ready to take an entry engagement if anybody walks their way towards the armory double wall that leads outside. Which is kind of interesting because of the fact that you really want to keep that Echo alive as long as possible and try and bleed out some time and maybe deny a plan. But nonetheless, it seems as though you're going to use that MP5 to try and take some early fights. Nothing is coming of that opportunity just yet, as just now, SSG are starting to enter the building, and it's going to be punished fairly early on as Rival takes Rampy off the board first.
Hey, you can see Rampy even looking for those vertical holes, but he just simply did not know the hatch was open. And now, SSG Academy not in a position to get that trade back. And again, look, another aggressive player on top east, but it looks like they may have not identified him, but are at least aware of his position.
Oh, that's a huge blunder by Emilio there. Debates with pretty much an absolute freebie. But Deity is quickly there to keep the man advantage in favor of Fluffy Aimers in this round, as Vil will be the next one down and out. Although Deity did eat a lot of damage, so it's not necessarily the end of the world in terms of losing that body, but you really need to be careful because Rival is still inside of security and causing problems for the SSG attack as they try to work their way into the building. Mike W will be the next one to potentially take a fight, but it doesn't seem like he's ready for a fight here, as he doesn't really know exactly where it is the peak is going to come from. We'll also get touched by one of those yokai drones. Now, things will get even worse as Rival will take down Debates at the top of East Stairs, and everything from SSG Academy is just falling apart.
Just never able to really deal with this position over by CC, and we saw this exact same problem. And oh my god, a nasty shot from Rival to put Focal in an unwinnable position, essentially, unless he's able to work it. But with that Legion Mine paired with the Echo, we can see why they brought so much utility in those spaces, making every swing an absolute headache for SSG Academy in their very first attacking round.
I really loved the choice to bring the Echo. That Echo had so much value throughout that round. Not only as that forward position that I was talking about, keeping SSG Academy out of the building, but also as he got towards the late round and started to fall back towards the site. He had his yokai drones positioned in spots that would help players that were still playing off-site take advantageous gunfights with the remaining SSG Academy players. And that's exactly what you saw as that round played out in the latter phases. SSG Academy had no information, and Fluffy Aimers were able to capitalize off that. A pretty solid round for their first defense. And now they get to set their sights towards Tellers. And another thing here, they're continuing to play with that intel gap and try and keep it in their favor by bringing out something like the Pulse.
And I think if we're going more into the theory side of Siege, we can really talk about, how, SSG Academy, they don't have enough intels, they're not using their drones to their fullest capability, and that is in part with Fluffy Aimers not only continuing to bring that view, this time not bringing it, but making sure that they identify where those drones are, eliminating them. But on the contrary, it's Fluffy Aimers making sure that they bring that additional intel operators. They make sure that they have that additional info that in rounds previously on SSG on their defense that they didn't have. And it really goes to show that at least in this series, Fluffy Aimers has had more success in focus on that intel game, making sure that they have a greater idea of what SSG Academy is doing both on the defense and on the attack.
About 30 seconds in, and really Recited holding a key position right now, one that SSG Academy did not hold when they were on the defense, and we saw Fluffy Aimers capitalize on it. So they're righting the wrongs of what they saw in the first half by keeping somebody there to make sure that no rush potential is available for SSGA. But JJ swings out. JJ with a nice opener onto Debates as the player on 90's now down. Maybe a second one coming for him, but no, he does damage, but that's it as Mike W inside of Break Room swings out there to trade his teammate back and keep the man advantage equal for both these teams. Recited as well, still sticking around. Nice shot onto Focal at the top of East. Beautiful shots from Fluffy Aimers here to start off this round, and they get the man advantage right back.
These castle barricades essentially just completely cutting off this top floor. It doesn't matter though, because SSG Academy, they're continuing to make sure they just bust through these angles, make sure that they create these openings and make these positions of these Fluffy Aimers players so uncomfortable and hard to play in.
now Fluffy AIMERS start to fall back towards the side. At least Rival and Deity do. Amelia still sticking around up above here. Maybe we'll be able to go for a late round flank on somebody like Mike W. who's over here on Mezzanine. Now, Rampy trying to do what Rival did in the first half and sneak his way down these stairs and maybe into the site. He had an opportunity to go for it, but thought better of it for the moment as he doesn't necessarily have the best coverage from his teammates. But he does have a player spotted out over inside of Workshop. We'll send some shots that way. No kill, no damage, however. Nothing really coming of that. Rival, interestingly enough, is holding a forward position, but he is not ready for the fight with Rampy. He has no idea about that one. Rampy gives the man advantage back in favor of SSG. Vil as well with another kill onto Deity. And now it's Emilio left alone all above. And on 1 HP, Mike W swings out from the mezzanine. And an SSG Academy add to their total.
It's just a round where SSG Academy always made sure that they had the numbers in every single position that they tried to take a gunfight. And now, relatively so, Fluffy AIMERS taking their time out, realizing that they have completely lost control of Border. And it's fallen into the hands of SSG Academy, a relatively great setup to start that round off. But SSG Academy, for the very first time, I think there was a round where they absolutely just dissected every position, the entire setup from the defense down to the teeth, in a position where Fluffy AIMERS were really never able to strike back and put SSG Academy on the back foot. And this is exactly what SSG need if they want to try and close out this second map and send us to a third. But Fluffy AIMERS making sure that they take this time out so they can stop this momentum now before it snowballs into an entire map.
Well, maybe, just maybe, SSG Academy were in fact saving this map for a rainy day, as they look very comfortable on it thus far. They have really been able to shut down a lot of what Fluffy AIMERS have been trying to do, whether it be the entry game, whether it be the late round lurks, even on defense. Some of these positions that Fluffy AIMERS have been holding, which you would have thought to be advantageous for them, just have not been. JJ there with a nice swing, but the positioning from SSG Academy is great to go for quick trades. And even the awareness just seems to be at a new high for them. Everything going their way. Just one round away from match point. Now we set our sights towards Workshop here for Fluffy AIMERS. They really need this round to keep themselves in the map. And I really like this lineup that they're bringing out here. It's fairly aggressive. You've got something like the Oryx, and you've also got that Solus available for the defensive side here to really challenge some of these early engagements and early attempts at taking map control from SSGA.
Yeah, and it goes back to the sense of, like on the attack, going into your defense these next couple of rounds, Fluffy AIMERS want to make sure that every single player that is on that extension, that is roaming, is able to be very flexible, that can get out if they are in a very dangerous and cornered scenario, like that rotate over that, Rival just jumped through it. They're giving themselves as many possible options to take to put SSG Academy on the back foot, starting with a very aggressive spawn peek from JJ that's going to be absolutely a failure.
Oh, no. That's a big loss there. It's one of your primary intel operators, other than the Solus, now off the board just 20 seconds into the round, with very few opportunities to generate some of those goo mines. That means that SSG Academy might just be able to get away with some sort of lurk play if the lower man count of Fluffy AIMERS are not careful to watch all the different avenues that SSGA can come from. Right now, Emilio kind of recognizing this will start to fall back towards the site slowly but surely. He'll work his way through the different avenues of Border. And maybe he thought about taking a fight with somebody outside a bathroom, but nothing coming of that just yet, as it really seems to be a very solo roam here from Fluffy AIMERS.
Just so many mistakes and missed opportunities from these roamers. And again, just DT not realizing his position. And Rival just swinging into a two-man cross, and now Emilio all cut off alone completely. No opportunity to have any success here. If he goes down this hatch, he will surely be killed, and it's just such a difficult situation that SSG Academy is continuing to put these players into.
I genuinely have to ask the question in a joking fashion. Did the players switch PCs between maps? Because literally they look like the opposite team of what they were on map number 1. SSG Academy are playing as a team. They're playing very coordinated, and their guns are alive. Vil with another kill under his sighted. And Fluffy Aimers continue to be very solo, and solo they will fall. One by one do the dominoes drop. And it's a flawless round from SSG Academy to put themselves on match point in map number 2. Map number 3 seems all but inevitable.
Yeah, SSG Academy. Every mistake and problem that we had on map 1, that being won the entry game, now being fixed with players like Jabate showing up, Rampy continuing his success onto now Border, but also the mistakes, the poor decisions that were being made, the semblance that we saw on Fluffy Aimers on map 1 is just happening a lot more on this map, and SSG Academy are a lot more awake, ready to punish these mistakes, punish these over-aggressive players that we saw the past 2 rounds. JJ overswinging in that 90 hallway. We saw the Souls overswing into a double crossway. It's Fluffy Aimers. Every time they swing into a least favorable position that really just puts them in no opportunity to have success whatsoever.
Do Fluffy Aimers complete the comeback here? It's got to start somewhere if they do it. We'll start things out on Armory. I'm really interested to see what the point of bringing out the Bandit is, because I don't necessarily see any obvious spots where you would use the Bandit. I mean, sure, that single wall inside of Archives is good and all, but there's not a lot of like key walls other than the main Armory wall, which they left one of those walls soft to put head holes on it, where you can get great value out of something like a Bandit. Now, Recited might have an opportunity for a spawn peek here out of side of the break room. He sees the players, sends a shot down his way, but not going to find any damage or any kills off of that angle just yet. Debate's now put on alert of the fact that there is some aggression coming out from Recited. We'll just sit back and wait. Maybe see if he can't bait the Vigil into an advantageous gunfight. But Focal will take a fight with Rival and lose that one to the Bandit. So I guess the Bandit is working out pretty well so far. Recited as well adds to his tally. Debate's finally trades something back for SSGA. But still, Fluffy Aimers with the lead.
Yeah, just a difficult position because the problem here is SSG Academy, they were overswinging positions that I thought was going to be somewhat isolated that we saw last time, but Fluffy Aimers making sure that even if they held these aggressive peaks, these over-aggressive positions, that there was going to be a player behind them to back them up. And on top of this, the intel game in the first opening round did seem to be in the favor of Fluffy Aimers, but that drone is going to be absolutely huge as Vil gets another one onto Deity, followed up by Mike W.
Now in the main advantage, SSG Academy on the attack. Milo needs to go big here, try and keep his team effectively in this map. JJ as well has a lot of weight resting on his shoulders, holding down inside a fountain. Been droned out now, so they likely know the general vicinity of where he's going to be playing, but he'll instead opt to go for a quick rotation all the way back towards Armory and try to keep himself mobile and keep SSG Academy guessing as to where these final 2 members are. SSG Academy seem a little bit nervous, we'll say, in terms of how quickly they want to push themselves forward towards the site, which Bates will finally start to work his way in to retake some of the space that JJ had initially vacated. As the time starts to dwindle, SSG Academy need to start to move here. They might have a lineup with JJ here, the player on metal, but he loses the fight. Emilio equalizes the man count down to a 2v2 now. As we enter the final 45 seconds, Vil there, however, with a great trade onto his teammate, and it leaves JJ all alone, trapped inside of Archives in a 1v2 with map 2 on the line. All of it to do, and only one toxic babe. The SMG-11 in hand will need to go big. He gets one down, but through the wall, Mike W with a quick trade onto his teammate. SSG Academy, they hit Border. They storm through Border, and map 3 is needed. It's win or go home. Grand finals on the line.
This is exactly what we talked about. If Fluffy Aimers continue to make the mistakes going on to this second map, SSG Academy was going to be more than ready to take advantage of it, and that's what we've seen here. Every single front that SSG Academy needed to step up in that entry position, in that overall cohesion, we're seeing every single gunfight, specifically that last one, realizing that they didn't want to give that last Fluffy Aimers player an isolated 1v1, realizing that they needed to double up. That was a solution that they had in every single gunfight, and that's why we saw SSG Academy continue to shut down these entry engagements, and that, in my opinion, is the sole reason that sent them on to Skyscraper.
Man, what a map from SSG Academy. They really righted the wrongs of Chalet. They looked like an entirely new team, quite honestly. Whether it be just the map itself or whether it be they realized that they were playing too solo. The trade game was fantastic for them on that map. In that last round in particular, you saw the map ended by a great trade from Mike W. And I really hope that they can continue to build off of some of that momentum that they got on Border, because the stakes are now at an all-time high. One map, just one goose, decides the fate for these two teams. Will it be Fluffy AIMERS, the team that have been kind of coming on and storming through things recently, or will it be SSGA, the veterans of T2, to go to XGS Season 7 Grand Finals? We'll have to find out right after this break. One final battleground stands between these two teams as it's Fluffy Aimers versus SSG Academy in the XGS season number 7 semifinals. Map number 1, well, it was a barn burner, 8-7 for Fluffy Aimers, but SSG Academy came back with a fury on map number 2, 7-3 on Border. And Goose, they looked like a whole new team there.
Yeah, I talked about it throughout that entire map from start to finish. Jabates needed to show up, and we needed a second player to follow suit. Jabates showed up, Rampy continuing his success from map 1 and 2, and even Mike W also showing up throughout that entire game too, continuing to be a huge player. But on top of that, the struggles, the mistakes and gaps that we saw from map 1 from Fluffy Aimers, the glimpse of bad gameplay translated onto Border, now leading on to Skyscraper, which, keep in mind, even if it was without JJ, lost 7-5 against Mormon Battalion, and they start on the attack.
I'm really concerned for Fluffy Aimers heading into this map because on map number 1, they had great coordination. Their gunners were all showing up in some fashion or another on every single round. But in that last map, it just really seemed like they were kind of doing what SSGA did on the first map, which was they were trying to spot gaps in every single round and trying to just be the hero on every single occasion. And it just didn't work quite as well for them. And I feel like JJ needs to really come back here and rein his team back in, because Skyscraper is a map where you can't really afford to do that all the time.
Yeah, it really did look like SSG was not on the same page. Whether it be the timing was all off. There were so many scenarios where you had isolated players over-aggressing, overstepping their position, exposing themselves to lines of sights, to crossfires set up by SSG, both on the defense and the attack. And it was just a situation where I talked about how Fluffy Aimers did such a great job of reading every micro play and decision from SSG. But on the second map, it just simply wasn't there whatsoever.
Another thing worth noting is, like you're saying, SSG starts on the defense. They really had a lot of success on not only the defense last map, but on the attack as a whole. So I think it's going to be interesting to see if they can keep the momentum going from their attacking half into this defensive half of Skyscraper, which, I mean, sure, that's a fairly easy question to answer generally, because generally Skyscraper is a fairly defender-sided map. But you do also sometimes see that teams between maps, heck, even between like tech pauses, we see teams just completely flip the script. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see, has this break dulled their momentum at all?
Yeah, it is. The main problem here for Fluffy Aimers is all they need is 2 rounds. If they can get 3 rounds, in my opinion, I think they've won the map. But if they slip in what is probably one of the most difficult maps to attack, right after, I would say ahead of Console, this is probably the most difficult map to attack on. If they get that 1-5 scoreline, if they get that 6-0, God forbid, scoreline, not winning 1 round, I think the map is all but over for them. Defense, a lot of the times, even if you're able to switch, just having that 2 to 1 round buffer for your opponents to win on the attack is just a situation where not only do they have all the momentum, but the mentality is all on their side, and you're down in the trenches, and it's very difficult. So Fluffy Aimers, this, in my opinion, is going to be the most crucial attack they've had throughout this entire event. They have to not only be very careful, but make sure they're not too slow and continue to push that aggression that had success against SSG all the way back on Chalet.
We're just looking at the stats overall from the previous attempts when SSG Academy and Fluffy Aimers played this. SSG Academy wins 75% of their defenses compared to 14%, or 17% rather, of the rounds won for Fluffy Aimers on their attacks. So this first half is going to be make or break for both these two teams. Fluffy Aimers have shown that they are not a great attacking team when it comes to Skyscraper, and SSG Academy have proven that they are dominant when they get on the defensive half of Skyscraper. So if Fluffy Aimers struggle out of the gates here, I could easily see it falling apart very quickly.
Yeah, and I think this very first round is going to be absolutely detrimental to this entire last map for Fluffy Aimers. They, again, I talked about keeping that pace, keeping that aggression. Very first round, making sure that they bring out that Dokubi paired with a Blitz, a Lion, and a Ying, making sure that they have all the possibilities possible On top of that, DT making sure that he can get these walls open without having to rely on the utility and the support of his teammates, having both that can opener with the EMP charges. He can simply get these walls all alone without no help whatsoever.
Well, so far, fairly aggressive defense from SSG Academy here, as both Mike W and Focal have been running out, but even more aggression coming from Fluffy AIMERS as JJ just runs right into the site. It's dealt a ton of damage, but Rival was quickly there to cover his teammate, but no! Vil and Jabates, both with kills to start things off. Rampy with yet another one, and the Rush, while it seemed like it might have worked initially, it's getting shut down in every single facet, in every single way it possibly could be. Emilio now dead, Jabates with another one, and a flawless start to Skyscraper for SSGA.
Talk about a mood killer. The very first round, you absolutely understand we have to apply this pressure, doing a split push, one from karaoke window, 2 players from that top black balcony rushing in, and your blitz just dies in a 1v1. On top of that, your Lion falls right behind him. An absolute failure of an execution from Fluffy AIMERS. And again, we don't want to get too grim. It's the very first round. There are plenty more rounds to play. But I talked about how that round is going to be very important. And that reason being is it was going to set the tone for this entire first half. That being that the defense was going to be absolutely overruling, unrelenting. And Fluffy AIMERS, they're going to need to, whether it needs to be exposing these gaps or creating these mistakes, these gaps, putting these isolated roamers and extended players away from the site in very hot positions, making sure that they do exactly what I talked about, dealing with these problem players very early on with a majority of their utility and making sure that they get rid of that problem before they attack the site.
Attackers are moving out to locate a bomb and defuse it.
Well, looking into round number 2, SSG Academy, as we typically see with the site rotation here on Skyscraper, will send us over towards Office and Exhibition. But not only that, they've also got a pretty heavy roam game going on right now. Only 2 players, Mike W and Focal, within a stone's throw of the site right now. Rampy will kind of fall back to join them, but still. Overall, it's a very aggressive style of roam from SSG Academy. The Fluffy AIMERS might be in a position where they could capitalize off of this, as they're quickly taking control of areas like the top of house. Probably are going to rotate themselves over towards office as well, and I believe an exothermic charge just went off, and Deity just opened up the main office breach.
Rampy just has continued to put just so much emphasis into his importance, not only to this team, but also just really how much he affects the entirety of these rounds, whether it be he gets these opening picks, holds these crucial points around the map, like these top stairs by desk in reception, and right now, everything that's going to be happening for now is simply getting these walls open. We're looking for that first pick, and it goes Deity's way. Almost gets a second, but he's going to be able to escape for his life for just as of now.
Oh, a nice swing up from her side. It nets Vil's life. So now, technically, the man advantage back heavily in favor of Fluffy AIMERS here, as it's technically a 5 versus 3. Focal as well, looking to get aggressive over towards Terrace. But nothing coming of that just yet. JJ will end Rampy's life, and now it's a 5 versus 2 as Deity's been allowed to get picked back up here. Mike W and Focal with a lot of work yet to be done. Still a lot of time that they have to hold on for as well. I'd like to see them potentially go for some sort of swing here, and they kill Recited as he's trying to hack into the cameras. A perfect net there in terms of not only utility, but lives. Now Vil somehow kills Deity to a bandit battery. What in the world is that? Now it's a 3 versus 2, and suddenly it seemed for a moment like it might be winnable, but Emilio stops the momentum from SSG Academy, and now it's a 1v3 with Focal on such low HP. If they just breathe on it, he'll basically be dead to rights, and indeed it will be Emilio to add to his total, and Fluffy AIMERS respond with an attacking round.
That is the round that Fluffy AIMERS needed. They needed a round where everything was going right for them. Their execution, their comms, translating into quick success into those picks, whether or not it was a defender player swinging onto them, rather than Fluffy AIMERS themselves actually engaging in that entry gunfight. The simple fact that they're not only winning these, but the overall cohesion, the team play, the coordination is just all there. Everything in that round, aside from that initial push or flank back in that second half, which was eventually shut down successfully, really sends a message that to Fluffy AIMERS that we're still in this, that our formula still works, and SSG Academy has not figured us out. And on turn, gives them that confidence going forward in these next couple of rounds.
We're going to reattempt Office here. No surprise there, as it's typically looked at as the second most favorite site on Skyscraper. One big difference being really not only the absence of the Warden, but you've also got a little bit more focus being put on utility stalling from SSG Academy. You've got something like the Wamai, you've got the Bruni being brought out once again, but also you kind of got the Mira as well, who can not only burn through extra utility or force Fluffy Aimers to burn utility that they might not have otherwise wanted to, but you also get a little bit of extra information and the ability to challenge different lines of sight with them. So, a couple of really good adjustments coming out here from SSG Academy. So far, seems like as well they're going to use these adjustments to play a little bit more towards the site, as I think they realized that they got a little bit too overzealous on that roam last round.
Fluffy Aimers doing relatively the exact same take in this early round, making sure that they get this site wall open, paired with that single wall over by reception, to make sure that they cut off these really aggressive positions close to the site, so it's harder for these players to rotate back. JJ almost losing his life purely off of a guess. And look at these angles, completely different from what Fluffy Aimers saw before, and it's going to continue to make them second guess themselves, make them drone just a little bit further, be a little bit more cautious, and also on turn give SSG Academy potentially an opening that they couldn't find the round previous.
Sided with the opener onto Mike W. And another one potentially lined up, but Emilio ends Jabates' life there. A DMR, that should have been an easy fight for SSG Academy, but nonetheless, Fluffy Aimers storming through the off-site portions of the map once again, thoroughly in the driver's seat as they look to set their sights towards the site itself. Hang on a minute, Vil. Nice positioning, nice kill onto Emilio to make things a little bit more manageable here for him and Focal. And he'll start to work his way back towards the site and join up with Focal as well to try and keep themselves covered and just play for that trade game and see if they can't survive a little bit longer.
This is absolutely huge. Not only that, but Vil's able to retake this space over by reception. JJ, he's low. If he just gets one damage dealt onto him, he's completely down, and that's also the bomb diffuser. Everyone pushing over by Dragon. The focus is here. It's going to be up to Vil for the very first to engage.
Now all alone is Vil in the 1v3. Like you said, JJ still on low HP, so definitely not out of the question here for him. Player sends house stairs, that C4 will go off, and that'll end Rival's life. Now it's almost a 1v1. The little bit that remains of JJ will not even come into question, however, as it's recited there in that round off and get the final kill. And that's back-to-back beautifully executed attacks for Fluffy Aimers on that office site. And well, we might as well just throw some statistics out the window as Fluffy Aimers have the lead here through 3.
Yeah, it was one of those rounds where you can say that previously, Fluffy Aimers, they'd found success. They've been able to read into the extension. And if you look at the positions, especially the player, that being the Rooney over by Drum, it was eerily very similar. And we can give props, and we can easily read into that situation, saying that Fluffy Aimers had exactly a great idea of where these players were going to be. This is a problem that they had last game where they weren't able to identify where these players' positions were. That's why they lost the map. That's why they weren't able to get these picks. But now that Fluffy Aimers is having success reading into these positions, enabling them to shut them down early before they're able to rotate back down to the site, solidify that bomb site to be even stronger than it is, it really puts SSG in a difficult situation. But now they get to go back down to, or back up rather, to Karaoke and T, try and recreate this success. But keep in mind, last time it was a one-off ditch rush round, and Fluffy Aimers are going to be looking to do a whole lot more than they did previously.
We go back to Karaoke now, and it's a relatively similar setup here for Fluffy Aimers. Really the one big difference being the fact that they're bringing out the Deimos. When you pair that Deimos with the Dokubi, that seems like it might be a very good deadly duo that will improve the already very much functional roam clear that Fluffy Aimers have been bringing out here. They've really looked good on those office clears when it came to clearing these off-site holds. And I really want to see how they decide to utilize it here, because once again, SSG Academy with a pretty hefty roam over towards the opposite side of the map from where the site is. Fluffy Aimers going to read into this and start to clear out some of these players, such as Vil.
Yeah, Vale continuing to put himself in these very advantageous positions. And not only that, but positions where he's trying to catch these fluffy aimer players off guard. If you look, there's not a whole lot of presence over by this backside of the map, over by reception. So as of now, he's going to be allowed to reside in this position completely unchallenged. And if they don't clear his position out, he's going to be able to potentially flank, apply some pressure from the back. But again, Fluffy Aimers look like they want to apply a lot of pressure front side, very close to the site, rather than trying to clear over by reception.
Ramby looking to take an engagement outside of Terrorist, but nobody from Fluffy Aimers is going to put their head in that window. So he's just going to be allowed to escape back to the site pretty much for free. But here's an entrance in, and Jabates will kill Deity to open things up. But JJ's quickly there for a nice little response for Fluffy Aimers. But still, it seems as though Fluffy Aimers have just gotten full site control. Emilio with another kill, and SSG Academy with a Logic Bomb raining out against them. I have no idea as to where they need to go and where Fluffy Aimers are located. Recited as well. Now Focal in the grave, and it's a heavy man advantage for Fluffy Aimers. Now a 1v3, JJ getting the plant down, and Bill with a lot of work to do down below. C4 will go out, it'll do damage, but it won't stop the plant. And now he's got to work his way back up a staircase here in a post-plant situation. One of the hardest things to do, and he'll jump outside, basically just give away any chance he had at the round. He will get a kill onto JJ. With how much time that takes to do, and how little value you get in the grand scheme of things, he still is in a very much precarious spot, trying to work his way back up here. There's a long line of sight being held by Recited, and it'll do some damage and light Recited up down just 13 or 3 HP rather. As the time ticks past the point of no return, Bill will just be hunting ghosts at this point. And Fluffy Aimers with 3 attacking rounds in a row on Skyscraper, a very impressive feat.
I talked about to start off, if Fluffy Aimers were able to get simple fact 3 rounds on the attack, that in my eyes the map was over. And obviously that is a very strong point to say, but now almost nearing that halfway point of this map, not only do they have 3 rounds, but they have the potential to get more. And this does really look like that they have picked in the Skyscraper and just have a complete colossal idea, colossal success. They understand exactly how and when they need to play this. And, all the way back in their very first one, I believe it was the play-in for Fluffy Aimers, I talked to JJ. I talked about, hey, why did you lose 7-5 to Mormon Battalion on Skyscraper? And he said not only was he not there, but he also simply didn't understand why they lost, giving the semblance of an idea that they were more than prepared to play that map. That's why they took Mormon Battalion there. And on top of that, because they lost, they were able to take away a lot of lessons, learn a lot from that match, and now apply it to this. And again, it's just absolute dominance. And keep in mind, the only round that they lost was a throwaway rush that from the start was not going to work.
Well, SSG Academy are definitely on the back foot now. They need something here. They need to get themselves back within 1 round at least. And that's a good start.
Oh my
as
God.
Rampy with a nice kill onto Deity takes the Thatcher off the board. SSG Academy with a nice little entry there. Just 30 seconds in. And that might just be the little kickstart that they need to get themselves another round on the board.
I don't know if you saw that, but 5 seconds before Rampy just completely took off Deity's head, Rival was like, hey, Rampy, are you awake? He was more than awake. Very first entry kill for this round is on that Thatcher, that plethora of not only attacking utility, but rather the ability to take away that defender utility. It really give not only so much, utility away from the defenders, but also in turn giving so much time to the attack is going to be just gone now. On top of that, Focal gets another one onto Rival, continuing to drive that dagger deeper and deeper into the heart of this attack.
SSG Academy with a really nice looking round here to this point. But do Fluffy Aimers know about Mike W's positioning? It seems as though Recited has some sort of idea, but he'll lose JJ as he's trying to wait for a kill to happen down below, and it's just not presenting itself. Now Fluffy Aimers find themselves in a similar situation that they found themselves on back in round number 1 when they attacked onto this site. Heavily in the man disadvantage and very little control to work with, all alone at the top of Black Stairs, and now dead to Jabates, and it leaves Emilio all alone in a 1v5 with a lot of work to do. He'll just pepper some shots in towards the players over by the pillar. But no kills coming of that just yet. Rampy will present his head, but Jabates is quickly behind him to follow suit and get that trade. And SSG Academy add a round onto the board.
What SSG Academy need is this final defensive round. If they go into this attacking half down 2 rounds, it's going to be an absolutely dismal position that is not only going to be uncomfortable, but in my opinion, nearly impossible unless we can see a absolutely almost perfect attacking half from SSG Academy. I just really, again, it was Fluffy Aimers really underestimating the positions, the value of these swings from SSG Academy. And on the contrary, SSG Academy reading into the positions of these first couple of attackers, shutting them down early on and giving them no chance to really answer back. And that's why we've seen these trades go absolutely unpicked, untraded, time and time after again. And now Fluffy Aimers, they're looking to potentially get a winning half, but either way, even if they get this 3-3 here, they've still won it.
Oh, most definitely. 3 attacking wins on Skyscraper, you take that and you run straight to the bank. Go buy a lottery ticket or something like that, because that's almost unheard of, quite honestly. It's like once in a blue moon where you get this much success from an attacking side. And it would get even better, even more rare if Fluffy Aimers can pick this one up here, because we're back to the site that they've had the most success on, frankly. It's a site that they're 2-0 on. They've had some really good across the map roam clears and just in general clearing out of some of these power positions that SSG Academy have been holding in places like Dragon and over by Shrine. Right now, it seems as though SSG Academy are kind of switching the name of the game, because they've got players like Rampy down below looking to cause a little bit of early aggression, maybe shoot out some utility while they're at it.
Again, Rampy continuing to reside in this position that we saw last time around that they defended this site. And it's relatively clear. Not a whole lot of defender presence. Deity does get one, and the conversion onto the site from Fluffy Aimers has simply just begun. And Deity winning the gunfight on the single wall for almost the 3rd time now.
Oh, JJ, does he have an idea about Rampy being here? It seems as though he doesn't at the moment. It'll give away his position. Maybe that will entice Rampy to go for the swing here. It doesn't seem like he will, however. Rampy, knowing that he's on the back foot right now in terms of man count, will opt instead to just play back towards the site, and rightfully so, quite honestly. You need to keep a gunner like Rampy up and kicking for as long as you possibly can, especially with Jabates being droned out now. He's far away from the site, almost as far away as you can get without being outside of the map, all the way over inside of Geisha. And Fluffy Aimers, they definitely know about this. They're very much keen to try and see if they can't clear him out here. Got some sort of information. A C4, however, will rain out from Jabates. It'll be Focal to get the next kill on Recited, but still, he's persisting in this spot. Fluffy Aimers have kind of stalled out here.
Yeah, they haven't been able to really deal with his position, and Jabates could be overplaying his card that's been dealt here, but also he has the potential to get such a strong swing, and there it is. The entire first half has just completely been lost. All these picks gone untraded. No map control by Fluffy Aimers, and they're looking to just kind of get their way back into this round, kind of get an easy bit of a trade, but it's not been given to them.
That was almost a disastrous moment there for Fluffy Aimers. All the momentum that they had down the drain, and now Amelia will ascend the stairs over by the top of house, but he's quickly dealt with by a C4 from Rampy over inside of Exhibition. Focal adds to his tally, and now it's Rival left alone in a 1v5 outside of Terrace. 1v4 rather, but nonetheless, there's not much longer for that world as Vil will end them out, and it's a 3-3 half once again.
And I do think, that was a very convincing finish from SSG Academy. And it's Skyscraper. In this current meta of Siege, this could simply just be whether it be an even-sided Skyscraper or if it is an attacking sided Skyscraper. But the simple fact is, SSG Academy need at least 3 rounds. On the other side, Fluffy Aimers, they could get 3, they could get 4, but you can't get that 4-2 half on attack. If you get the 4-2 half on attack, you've lost this map, you've lost the series, you are out of Season 7 of XGS. And this is what is so absolutely dire of going into your attacking half, whether it be losing or an even half to your opponents when they're translating onto the defense, because now not only does Fluffy Aimers get to play on the defense, but they also have an entire half understanding the idea of how SSG Academy is approaching this map. And obviously, it doesn't apply into every single bit of the defense, but it does give you a general idea of how they approach the map, how their theory of siege is applying so far, rather than just going in completely blind starting on the defense.
I'm really curious to see about what the plan is from Fluffy Gamers here with their off-site hold. Because right now they got 4 players off-site. Actually, nobody on the site right now. Everybody from Fluffy Gamers is off over by Office and Exhibition, setting up utility, potentially going for some early aggression. Maybe even Recited adding to that early aggression as he looked to swing out from the top of Black Stairs and try to kill a player on the rappel end. Nonetheless, he'll back up at least a little bit here and play a little bit more passively and instead opt to maybe see if he can't bait somebody into an unadvantageous swing here. Overall, though, Fluffy Gamers, pretty soft sight hold, and it'll get even softer as DD's the first one to fall.
A great opening, and another SSG Academy completely just shutting down these players, doing exactly what Fluffy Gamers tried to do on their very first attacking round. But these positions are completely unfound, and there's Rival for a big double.
Rival going huge now. It seemed almost over for Fluffy Gamers, but another kill for JJ. Now he's all alone, but still, this seemed almost unthinkable just moments ago when SSG Academy had everything going for them. Not only that, it seems as though they know where Vil is. At least they had some sort of ping. There's one kill for JJ. Vil now dead. Rampy left all alone inside of Drum in a 1v3, but he's just too good there. The L85 in hand, and Rampy wins out the 1v1. SSG Academy reclaimed the lead.
Wow, it's so hard not only to predict this series, but also to predict this map of Skyscraper. I think the biggest solution and the biggest winning factor in that round for SSG Academy was simply that one nade was a device that completely pushed back the presence of that player on Black Stairs and enabled SSG Academy to completely take control of top Black. Obviously, getting that player inside of Geisha for absolutely free, didn't even have to charge you a dime. It helped you out a lot, but being able to push that player back down to Black, make your way in, get a pick into T, and then also realize that the player was going to be trying to rotate back up from Black, shut him down, in my opinion, really just completely closed down the round, closed out the winning factor for Fluffy AIMERS, because even with that huge flank from Rival, the positions of SSG Academy were just not only so set, but also the intel was just so set in stone also, and it really just was a really unwinnable solution as soon as they cleared that top Black position.
Well, gamers do not seem too keen to want to go back to karaoke, at least initially. They'll start to work their way through the initial site rotation, and we'll go to Office for round number 8. I actually don't mind this quite at all. It seems as though they really like this Office site, not only on attack, but also on defense. They had pretty good success on attack. The only thing worth noting is, similarly to how SSG Academy was playing this defense here, they're very spread out throughout all portions of the map. You've got Recited down below, you've got players roaming over by Karaoke and T, and even over, I believe, as far as Geisha. Maybe not quite that far, but still. They are very much roaming off the site and trying to challenge SSG Academy for some of this initial map control.
And I think if we really look at the overall lineup of SSG Academy, the biggest change up from map 1 is Jabates. Now in this third map, and what is going to be our final, 8 and 4 absolutely just shutting down these entry engagements has just given it an absolute opening for SSG Academy, allowing those players to play their trade, but Jabates overplaying his position, and Emilio understanding his very well.
Nice kill there from Emilio, but Mike W with a nice trade for his team, keeping SSG Academy in this round. They technically now have the lead, especially considering, look at the operators that they have remaining. That Ying is going to be such a problem to deal with. Although Rival is uniquely suited to dealing with something like that, Ying, of course, being on the Warden. Although he isn't really anywhere nearby as to where the Ying might potentially come from. So he'll have to definitely go for a rotation here. Or SSG Academy might just rotate right into him, as it seems as though SSGA want to clear Rival and JJ from this position inside of Dragon. Bill has a very tight angle here, and he'll be able to cut off the rotation back from Rival whenever it does happen to come. Likely whenever they deal with the shield that he's currently playing behind, although they don't really have anything to deal with that. So Rival could technically just sit here and wait as long as he wants to. Might just want to go for the swing, but no! Vil just jumps right in the shrine window and kills Rival outright, but JJ is there for a quick trade. Rampy eating some damage. JJ with another kill. Mike W dead. All up to Rampy and another 1v2. Make it a 1v1 against Recited. And now, Rampy needs to just slow things down here for a moment. Gather some information on where this Jaeger is currently playing. As Recited looks to potentially go for a flank here for just a moment. But instead, opts to sit and wait as he's got information working against him. Rampy should know exactly where Recited is now. Especially with that second drone coming in. He starts to push his way up towards the side. He's still got one more Candela to work with to really turn the tide in his favor and maybe bait a swing from Recited. Candela will go off and Rampy will start to walk his way in here. Does he know where the Jaeger has changed position to? He certainly does, but Recited is just better there. Blind and all, working against the Ying. It doesn't matter. Recited wins the 1v1 and Fluffy Aimers tie the game.
We're just a complete back and forth between these two teams, an absolute dogfight. Every single position is being fought for. We saw that the Dokkaebi simply had to jump in. They had no win factor. They flashbang didn't work because it was simply a warden behind that shield. Didn't have any nades left, so they simply just had to jump in through that window, make sure that they got with the player that they only knew was there, and then deal with the fact afterwards. Rampy also almost going just huge enough for Recited, playing his position just well enough, working off of that sound call that he got, and now evened out. Fluffy Aimers still on the defense. Keep in mind, SSG Academy just only to send us into overtime potentially need 2 more rounds on the attack, and that was a great read by them, but just took a little bit too long on when they actually got that intel to when they actually executed off of it.
10 seconds remaining.
Round number 9 takes us back to karaoke for Fluffy Aimers here. And one big change that I really like here is the presence of the Valkyrie. Valkyrie went unbanned in this map, and it's really the first time that we're kind of seeing the Valkyrie being brought out here by one of these two teams. And I really like it because you can get so much information onto where SSG Academy are coming from. That's kind of been something that Fluffy Aimers have been a little bit lacking in, is kind of that late round information as to where the attackers are actually at. So I really like bringing that out, but not only that, you also have the Goyo and the Legion for a little bit of extra information in their own right, and area denial to really put a little bit of pressure on SSG Academy and force them to be more vigilant with their time management.
I think vigilant is absolutely the perfect phrase, because you, as the defenders, need to have a hold, a grasp in knowledge of where every position is being held. Or rather, the positions that aren't being held and where the attackers are actually trying to take. Vocal waiting outside of that window of kitchen, just waiting for the call, potentially to jump in, get that plant down, but they first have to deal not only with his top hold, but most importantly, DT holding that vertical. He's going to be the main blockage point, the main boulder in front of them. Is what's stopping them from getting this bomb down.
Rival there with a nice little bit of coverage from the restaurant stairs. Will shoot out one of those Selma charges as it tried to work its way into Geisha, or at least as Mike W started to throw it in towards Geisha. Another one come in, and that's all the hard breach now gone for SSG Academy. Burned out perfectly, but hang on a second. Fluffy Aimers, they've just been stormed into the site. SSG Academy have just hit the go button, but the go button has quickly been stopped in its tracks, as it's now a 5v2 in favor of Fluffy Aimers. Mike W and Rampy now have to try and pull a miracle out here. Mike W has worked his way into the building itself, but not for much longer. It's from below. Recited sends him to the grave. And now it's Rampy. Alone in a 1v5, Fluffy Aimers have just locked them out of the building here in all facets.
I mean, Rampy just, there's really no opening here. Even if he gets a pick, sure, Rival's low in health, but there's 5 players. And essentially now what this last 47 seconds, 45 seconds will answer as is just a unofficial tactical timeout. Give the players time to talk it over, figure out what they did wrong in that round and that execution onto the bomb site in the top floor by Geisha, and also give them some guidance, give them an understanding of what they need to do in these last couple of rounds if they want to potentially win it or send themselves into overtime. Well,
Rampy's been allowed to work his way into the building here, but still Not a lot of time to work with. A lot of Fluffy Aimers obstacles still in his way. And a directly trade with JJ on his way out the door. Actually, no, Emilio's up above. Never mind. Yeah, no, it was a direct trade. Okay. Direct trade with JJ to end out that round. Fluffy Aimers reclaiming the lead here at 5-4. And with where they're at right now, they can go right back to karaoke and really position themselves with a nice little chance to get on the match point.
It is really curious because that entire push having both, I believe it was maybe a Brava, or whatever, the secondary attacker right behind the blitz jumping into that bomb site. They didn't know Legion was there. They had no idea whatsoever. It goes back to my idea of stale intel versus newly collected intel. You can run out an entire bomb site, get the intel, relay to your teammates that it's relatively soft, which it was. But the problem is, if you don't send out an additional drone and update that utility 30 seconds after you got it, most likely a player will retake it, and that intel, that call that you got from that drone will become absolutely stale and worthless because there now will be a player residing in the position that retook it after you drone that you had no idea was even close to.
Locate and defuse a bomb.
Fluffy Aimers looking for match point here. A lot riding on the shoulders of SSG Academy with this attacking round. This is a big turning point potentially here for either team. And with that, once again, Fluffy Aimers spread out throughout the map, Recited and Rival, all the way off in Narnia, looking for some potential early engagements with SSG Academy. But are SSG Academy aware of this? It doesn't seem as though they are. Instead, the push seems to be, well, let's maybe go for a rush again, as they've got the Amaru, they've got the Ying, they've got the Finka ready and waiting at the top of Black Stairs. Potentially just burst into the building at a moment's notice. That could be coming very soon here.
JJ reinforcing that wall is going to be absolutely huge because it doesn't give initial line of sight from that balcony into the site, but if you see Jabates, he doesn't have defuse. He's looking to purely jump into the site, perhaps get a pick, take care of JJ, and clear out the bomb site, then leading for Mike W to potentially get that plant down, and it's going to be coming here fast.
Here we go. Jabates is just working his way in. He's got a shotgun in his hand, but there's a long-range trade from Emilio as he wasn't able to find any value on that. JJ still allowed to persist. DD with a kill, as well as JJ with yet another one. The rush seemingly failed once again. These teams continue to keep trying it, but no, Deity as well jumps out the building and kills Mike W before the Claymore can do anything to him. Now it's Focal left alone with series point on the line, trying to clutch this one out. He's got a couple of smoke grenades, a couple of Candelas. That's all that stands between SSG Academy and match point.
And back-to-back rounds where SSG Academy, as many players like to say, try to cheese it. Try to get a very quick rush into the site. Try to catch these players off guard. But Fluffy Aimers were more than ready, and that's why we see SSG Academy fall after these 2 rounds.
Focal will walk his way up the brown staircase, or black staircase, rather. He's got a player inside of T that is pretty much nearby, and if he swings, he might be able to take an engagement with, but JJ's sitting nearby with an M590 in his hand, so that's not a fight that he's going to be able to win and get away with for free. Gonna try to work his way in here, but no. Inside of T, Emilio says no more. He had pings working in his favor. Everything going Fluffy Aimers' way in that round, and they will secure themselves series point.
And because of that, SSG Academy will be taking their tactical timeout. That essential unofficial one that we saw when Rampy was in a 1v5 didn't help whatsoever. And I think it's a situation where you can only do so much without your coach to give you guidance, even though Rampy is an experienced player. He doesn't have experience in what is happening in front of him. He's not a fortune teller. And those last 2 rounds, again, just looked like they didn't really have enough of a great idea to really attack those other sides of the map, those extensions, to try to get map control, apply pressure away from the site. And they really, again, try to cheese it. Try to attack the site with these, execution utility operators like a Ying and a Maru, try to catch these players off guard. But Fluffy Aimers, they've been so deep in these trenches through these 3 maps. They're more than ready for it. And SSG Academy, they're now going to take this chance to go back to the coach, try to get information, set up more in-depth attacking pushes to give Fluffy Aimers more to deal with as they stand on that tall hill that is a 6'4" on the defensive skyscraper.
I mean, not only that, but just look at that scoreboard. SSG are losing. Fluffy Aimers are pretty much cruising through these defenses right now. And Rival and Deity aren't even really showing up. It's been JJ, Emilio, and Recited that have really been the heavy hitters on Skyscraper. And I have to fear, if SSG even want to have a chance at mounting a comeback here, what happens if one of these rounds of Rival or Deity show up big? That could be the closing factor. One of those two members can really show up.
I think we can just give, now that we're going into the late of the third map, absolute props to JJ. Aside from the second map was bad forever. But both maps, if they do win it out here, whether it be this round or the next couple, JJ has shown absolutely huge when we have players like DT and Rival who have fallen short a couple of these maps and rounds and halves. And just simply not only to be able to lead your team, but to continue to have what a lot of people say life games for JJ, all the way leading back a couple of weeks ago with Wildcard Restart. He just was showing up on the board in these entry positions, taking them whether or not he was winning them. But again, the simple fact that not only is he able to lead his team, but also show up in the kill department just really just gives so much to Fluffy Aimers.
Well, Goose, this might be it. Potentially the final round of the first semifinal here in Season 7. And it's Fluffy Aimers with the advantage. The time ticking down, the final moments potentially for SSG Academy in this season. And they have to win an attack on Office. Right now, Fluffy Aimers are just kind of sitting back and waiting here. They're not overextending themselves too much. Sure, they are still off the site, but they're playing together. They're doing what has gotten them to this point. They're utilizing timely aggression with great team play to secure themselves an advantage here. Mike W will work his way into the building initially and maybe start to open up some sort of angles over towards Drum and maybe start to put pressure on Fluffy Aimers here. A C4 will go out from Deity and do no damage. So a little bit of utility burn there, but SSG press on.
Yeah, it's just Fluffy Aimers not giving up this map control and relatively not a lot of pressure being put on from SSG Academy. Not being able to open that wall relatively easily has given them so many problems. Sure, there's a little bit of a Maverick hold, but you're going to need a lot more than that. First, they want to try to get rid of this Bandit battery, but Mike W, he's going to be punished for it. And the attack is starting to go on to this Drum's position, but Fluffy Aimers are more than prepared for it.
Oh, they definitely seem prepared for it. SSG Academy getting chipped away moment by moment. Here comes the swing in. Vil with the opener onto Emilio. So that's a good start in this round. But it's quickly traded back by Rival on the flank. He'll get no more than that. He'll do a little bit of damage, but Focal keeps the man advantage in the lead for SSG Academy here. They're on such low HP, however, which is going to be a massive problem here as they enter the execute phase of this round. They need to be vigilant once again. They need to go quickly and finish off these final three Fluffy Aimers members. Because if they don't, it will certainly spell disaster for them as they try to take gunfights in this lower time. They're still just kind of sitting here, however. Fluffy Aimers are just more than happy to sit back and let this time bleed away. Deity with the equalizer now as he works his way back up towards Shrine. He kills Focal and instead will decide to fall back closer to the site. JJ and Recited as well, playing together inside of Lounge, trying to keep SSG at bay at the gates. Here comes the run-in. 1 kill for JJ, 2 kills for JJ. This might be it. Jabates with it all to do, and Deity ends out the game. It's the curse once again coming into effect. SSG Academy fall in the semifinals, and Fluffy Aimers will once again participate in a grand final tomorrow.
Fluffy Aimers now moving on to that final best of 5. Look to take on perhaps whether it be Makers or Mormon Battalion, a matchup that not a lot of us would expect, but going back throughout these entire 3 maps, specifically Skyscraper, it's just a struggle bus. Especially, I talked about getting that 3-3.5 was almost a death sentence for SSG, because just attacking Skyscraper is just so difficult. And I think those first 3 rounds that Fluffy Aimers were able to take off of the attack really went and showed that they just had a great understanding of not only how they wanted to play this map, but also taking away the mistakes, learning from the problems that they had last time they played against Mormon Battalion, even though they didn't have their head honcho JJ, who also, keep in mind, stepped up absolutely huge. A couple of players like Jabates, especially on that first map, just really lacking and just simply wasn't enough.
Man, this Fluffy Aimers team looks scary. the individual gun power combined with the leadership that JJ brings to this team, they've just been firing on all cylinders recently. Sure, they dropped Border, but you can just kind of chalk that up to maybe a little bit of them trying to get a little bit of a hero play coming in here. You saw a lot of times on that second map where they were just trying to do their own thing. They got back to what was working for them. They played together. They got the refrags. They had timely aggression when they needed to have it the most. Most importantly, they won rounds when it mattered, and they will play tomorrow in the grand final.
Yeah, Fluffy Aimers look absolutely great, but also they made so many mistakes. It's just so many questionable decisions. It's just those very singular, isolated, like JJ just getting overheated, swinging in positions he shouldn't. Those are problems that not only you should be able to, but really need to fix, especially if you go up against a team that most likely will be makers, unless Mormon Battalion can pull out an absolute upset out of their trick hat. But again, just, a very great showing from Fluffy Aimers, but also a lot of work to be done.
There is definitely a lot of work to be done, but Fluffy Aimers, they now have an advantage. They can go back and sit back, regroup as a team, celebrate a little bit, but most importantly, they get the chance now to study this next game and look at what both Mormon Battalion and Makers will do and potentially prepare strategies for tomorrow's grand final, which is a huge advantage because you also get that mental boost that goes with it. So you're riding high and you're playing with extra confidence. And I really think that that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and it actually looks like Nomical, you'll be getting to interview the man himself.
I got an interview coming up here with Rival. Rival, can you hear me, my friend?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, congratulations on the win tonight. I got to ask you first and foremost, what's it like playing with JJ? Because I feel like you guys as a team, like that core three, have been building just like quietly, but I think playing on a team with JJ, he's kind of got like that mix of like structure, but also timely aggression. How does he kind of like enable your team to play that way?
Playing with JJ recently has been super fun and kind of frustrating at the same time because back when we were Lost Mangoes, we had a really good run in the LCQ, and that style of siege has been in JJ's head since our Element team, and playing with him now, he's super happy and he's super energetic and he keeps us alive in the game. But he's so set on this aggressive style of siege that sometimes it gets kind of frustrating whenever you're trying to like play a more fundamental style of siege. It keeps us super energetic and it makes practice fun, that's for sure.
Most definitely. It definitely seems like you guys are having a lot of fun right now. But specifically talking about the newer additions of players like Recited and Emilio, how have they been kind of like incorporated into the team? And do you think that had a lot to do with your guys' like overall success?
Oh, for sure. Recited and Emilio, without them two, we would be nowhere close to where we are now. Like, we actually found two gems in free agency, is what you would call it. We kind of stole Recited straight off of Ink, and Emilio, I mean, he was LFT, kind of floating around wildcard, and those two actually fit the style of siege so perfect because their gun skill is just on the next level. Nobody can compete. And then they just love to just run at people and just float and just fly around the map. And then also just adding on to Emilio, he's like, we call him our sentry turret of our team because you post him up on the AK-12 or like Grim and he'll sit there on an angle and he'll just fry whoever puts their head in it. And that like really gets us so many openings in rounds because he's just our sentry turret.
I think that's a really interesting point that you bring up there about having these two individual gunners come in. I think another big thing to look at in particular is like the mental game, and that's another question I want to ask you about. Is tonight's game felt like it was very much a game of streaks. When you have a team like you guys have with a lot of these individual gunners, not only who is it, but what is it that you guys do if you guys were on like a cold streak tonight that kind of was able to bring you guys back into it and keep the mental up and the guns going?
Definitely. We are a team of like, we like to every game we have a hero game is what we like to call it. Every game somebody has a really good game. Like I know map 1 of the series, we went 8-7, we were up 6-3 and we had 2 people doing really well. Somebody had a bad game and it was fine, we won that map. And then map 2 was a cold streaks. We had 2 or 3 people doing horrible and then we kind of just like fizzled out that map. And map 3, I mean, it was just JJ turned up completely, had a completely opposite map and really helped us win the map. And I mean, without him, we probably would have lost the series. Like, it's just everybody on this team is capable of having an absolute game that just turns the series around, and that's what makes the team so good, because you don't know who's gonna pop off in what series.
And you mentioned border there as well. I think that's another interesting point. When you were doing the ban phase, were you guys surprised that SSG Academy picked into border? Obviously, you guys are really good at Nighthaven, so it was no surprise that they banned it out first. But they had shown recently that they didn't really like to play that. So were you guys a little bit surprised and maybe it caught you off guard?
I wouldn't say surprised. We're kind of in a weird spot with our border. The last 2 times we played it, we were really confident. Today and against Wildcard and Wildcard Restart, and we've kind of just got beat on it. Like, we got beat. Our guns were bad, or maybe our strats weren't good enough, etc. I think they were trying to play border because they knew that we weren't feeling comfortable on it. And I mean, we're gonna keep playing border. Teams are gonna keep trying to pick border, and one of these times we're gonna win border, and it's gonna completely hurt a team. The day our guns are on is the day we're not gonna lose border. That's for sure. They definitely wanted to go border, and we let them have it, and we lost for it. So,
I mean, hey, who knows? It might be tomorrow, the chance where you guys get your chance at revenge for it. But
that'll be it.
one last question for you. This is kind of like a fun one. I just want to know, between Makers and Mormon Battalion, who would you guys rather play? And I want to know why.
Definitely Makers. We don't want an easy chip. We know we had a fun game against Makers in Wildcard Restart. They're a whole different team now with Tristan and Adam being more in their system. We really want a good grand finals match with Makers, because if we win, then that makes winning this league so much better, because we've already beaten SSG Acad. Now we got to go to play Makers tomorrow. So I think winning a chip, beating considered 2 of the best T2 teams, that it'd make things way easier, way better.
Absolutely. That'd be a nice little feather to put in your cap. But before I let you go here, I want to give you a moment to just take the stage and give any shout outs that you'd like to give. Maybe thank the fans or something like that.
Shout out to all Fluffy AIMERS fans for sure. The org, they're super nice to us, and they promote us really well, and they're always there for our games. And shout out to the team, of course, man. Wouldn't be here without them.
Absolutely. Well, we look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow in the XGS Season 7 Grand Finals. Rival, go celebrate with the team, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, man.
Alrighty, Goose. Always good to talk with somebody on Fluffy AIMERS. They're just having fun, man. They really love playing Siege right now. And you can tell, they're just flying around, playing as a team. And it just seems like everything that they do just works.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's also nice to talk to another player that's not JJ. Not to shoot shots at JJ, but just really to, pick the brain of somebody, from a different perspective. And my main thing was when he talked about how JJ was setting up this style of Siege that they're now playing all the way back at Element 2. And I think it really goes to show, I talked about this with Happy when we casted, or when we talked about, players like that, is if you give teams time to really just get to know each other, expand, work out their kinks and problems, then you'll have success. It's a problem that we see with teams. We even talked about, Rival talked about Inc. Like, when they played in BGS, they only lost 1 game, that being playoffs. After that game, blew up. And I think giving, especially JJ, just giving these players, giving this roster so much time to really blend has really granted them their success.
I'm really looking forward to seeing them in the grand final tomorrow. This team is so much fun to watch. They play with so much confidence. And I think it'd be really interesting to see who they go up against, because I feel like both of their potential opponents, they play with a lot of structure, but they also have that, X factor where they can kind of just, activate. They're both kind of similar to Fluffy AIMERS in a way, where they kind of have that main, structured leader, but they also have a bunch of individual gunners who like to just go off. I think it'll really make for a compelling grand final.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And keep in mind, if we do see Makers versus Fluffy AIMERS tomorrow, and Fluffy AIMERS go on to beat it, even though that we're going way far in the future, they would have been Thrive, SSG Academy, and then Makers. And keep in mind, in a lot of people's opinions, the top 4 amateur Siege teams right now are Fluffy AIMERS, Makers, Thrive, and SSG Academy. So this essentially would put them in a position where they are a top 2, maybe the best amateur Siege team. And we talked about how, Rival really wants Makers. He really wants this chip, this best of 5, to mean everything. Not only to him, but also to the entire community. Really show that they can really hang with the top gunners.
I mean, what a couple weeks it's been here for Fluffy AIMERS. They go to the wildcard restart grand finals last weekend. They beat 2 Pro League teams in the process of that, and then they come in here and they storm through XGS Season 7 playoffs to punch their ticket to the grand final. And it's just fascinating to see, because this team, they were at the bottom of Element about a month ago, and they've just completely turned everything around, and that's what 2 new players, that's what a rejuvenated team and a team that's playing on the same mindset can really do there.
Yeah, and I think, we've seen so many players with systems. Mr. B, Penguin, Mr. B's gone now, but now we have a player like JJ, which I think the entire, I guess, after maybe even tomorrow, we'll give it till tomorrow. If he wins tomorrow, I think the entire theory, the entire idea of JJ's a bad player will no longer exist. And I think not only for him, but the entirety of these players for Sided and Miller. These are players who need this game. They have something to prove, and they have all the momentum behind them.
Well, Goose, that is semi-final game number 1. Fluffy AIMERS emerged victorious over Space Station Academy, 2-1 fashion. Well, we got to find out who their opponent's going to be tomorrow, so we're going to toss it to a quick break, and when we come back, it's semi-final matchup number 2. Don't go anywhere.